This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Blues get the puck straight away. Verona, shot on, rebound, backhand Letty. Hayes, he scores! Kevin Hayes is first as a Blue. Puck cleared around to the line, not out. Now they get it out. Hayes this time to the empty net. Score! And they're back to 500. There's the horn. You can bring out the Zamboni. The St. Louis Blues beat the New Jersey Devils by a score of 4-1 tonight. Now is Saad in front. Backdoor to KYROU. He scores! Thomas to the middle. On his forehand. Score! Robert Thomas. Goals in 3 straight games.
Everyone is trying to get this captain on the board. Look out, here it is.
He shoots. He scores! Just like that, Joe. Braden Shen. A 6-3 final tonight on home ice. Blues have won 2 in a row for the first time this season.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. T-Bone, one more day off. He'll be back in tomorrow. We will give you our football pick'em reveal tomorrow.
Oh, good.
1 day delayed because I got to stick it in his face.
Whoa.
Alex.
Stick what?
Yeah.
Oh, the games?
The
Okay.
results.
Yeah.
He picks Georgia. Kiss my ass, T-Bone. We'll get to that tomorrow.
Suck it, T-Bone. I know you're listening.
That audio you just heard was courtesy of the one and only Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale on the broadcast for the Blues on Friday and Saturday night. A couple back-to-back games for the boys, and they get wins in both of them, Alex. More importantly, they looked good in both of those performances over the weekend.
Yeah, they did.
There was nothing fluky about it. They just flat-out outperformed each of the opponents that you went up against. And this was no, you're not going up against, San Jose. You're not going up against the Calgary Flames, who have no idea which way is up.
Pittsburgh, I think I'm faster on skates than some of those guys.
You went up against 2 teams that have been, at worst, pretty good. At best, championship contenders when it comes to the New Jersey Devils. That's what they're expecting to be going into the season. Now let's get it out of the way, because I'm sure we'll get it on the text line here in a minute. Yeah, Jack Hughes got hurt. You play who's in front of you.
Yep.
And there have been times this year, last year certainly, where it hasn't mattered who the opposition was. I told you last week, I don't care who's on the schedule anymore. I care about if the Blues are playing well. And over this weekend, they actually played well. All of the underlying numbers, it matched with the scores that you saw. They outscored New Jersey and Montreal by a combined score of 10-4. And Alex, what I loved about the game, at 5-on-5, they outshot their opponents. They outchanced their opponents. They had high danger chances that were 8-1 in favor of them when Shin was on the ice. Overall, they had 10 or more high danger chances in each of those games over the weekend at 5-on-5. Loved seeing what we saw from the Blues this weekend. Did you enjoy watching those over the weekend?
You sound like you're about to be the captain of my hype train, and I'm all aboard that one, BK. I loved it. I mean, to me, the Montreal Canadiens game was more impressive than the New Jersey Devils win. And I'll explain why. Because you hear that, you're thinking, Alex, New Jersey is the Stanley Cup contender. Montreal's not that good of a team. Couple of reasons. One, that was the second of back-to-back games while the team you were facing was waiting around for you. And typically this Blues team does not play well in back-to-backs when they're going up against somebody who's well-rested. The speed factor kills this Blue team. They dug down as deep as you can ask them to find the momentum to play in that Saturday game against Montreal. They outskated them. They outplayed them. They had more physicality than them. They were the better team from start to finish. And on top of it, they were a very fast team. Montreal is one of the fastest teams in terms of overall players in the NHL. And I thought that was going to hinder them this season. Vancouver, Arizona, Colorado, Blues couldn't solve it. Montreal had no solution for the Blues, and their speed got the best of them. So I was very impressed by both games. The main factor into all of this, look, the goaltending has been outstanding all season long. That's not cracked at all. Defensively, I know you've had some bad outings, Vancouver, Arizona specifically, but they've been tight and they've been playing the same, minus a couple of games where they've broken down. But these 2 games, the amount of people that have been concerned about offense, and look, I was starting to fall into that conversation of like, this offense is a little concerning. Where's the game breakers? We saw that in both New Jersey and Montreal. In both games, they have good goaltenders. They've got good defenses. The Blues chemistry on their forward lines right now, really the five-man chemistry that's on the ice, seems as connected as we have seen in almost a year and a half.
Agreed.
And that is massive for this team. If it took you 10 games to really get on the same page, hopefully this is your opportunity to be off and running now with that chemistry.
And I have no idea if it will be or not. No idea. But I know Craig Berube liked what he saw over the weekend. Here's what he had to say after the win on Saturday.
Yeah, there's a better flow for sure. I think that's just from playing on your toes and being more aggressive, to be honest with you. You know, not thinking so much, but going, doing your job, you know, being aggressive. There's going to be mistakes, but I'd rather be aggressive.
The aggressive and flow that he's talking about, BK, is everybody's chipping in on the offensive zone. I mean, we're seeing defensemen take the puck down below the net, which means your forwards are backing them up at the blue line. We're seeing guys taking shots from the blue line that are getting through with bodies in front of the net. This no longer is a team that we saw the first 3 or 4 games that were just waiting for their opportunities to come to them. They're creating their own offensive opportunities now because of the forecheck and because of the offensive zone aggressiveness.
I would rather see you, and my football coaches used to tell me this when I played in Pee Wee, right?
Pee Wee.
It was the local accountant who also wore a hat on the sidelines with a brand new
Were you in hardball? Was Keanu Reeves a part of your team?
Pretty much, yeah, more or less.
Nice. You seemed like you were Suge Baby. That was his name, right?
We're just going to keep on keeping on.
It was.
When I was playing Pee Wee football, and I was the water boy that doubled as the right tackle.
Hold on. Hold the bleep on. They 6 foot, 110 pounds soaking wet. You were a right tackle?
I was 5'3" at the time, you know, late growth spurt.
Yikes.
The coaches always told us, hey, you guys are going to make mistakes. At least make them fast. Like, if you're going to get somewhere that's wrong, get there fast. And for the Blues this year, a lot of what they've done it slow. It's slow puck decisions. It's slow losses in their own zone. It's just a slow bleed. On Friday and Saturday night, they were playing fast. It felt like finally for the first time this year, they said, you know what? Let's just go play. And like, if we lose, so be it. But we've been losing already and we're playing slow and it's been just this slog.
Yeah.
I hope that is something that sustains. Because when you watch them play that way, man, it's entertaining. If nothing else.
Oh, God, yeah.
And for the first 8 games of the season, this team was not entertaining. And I know they're not playing to entertain you or me. They're not clowns up there on a stage. But I do think it's helpful when you're playing an entertaining brand of hockey. I think it makes the environment at Enterprise Center a much better place to go play hockey games. And for much of the season, it has not been that way. And for much of the last couple of years, frankly, it hasn't been that way. So hopefully that's something that sustains. Last week, we asked Darren Pang, at what point during the season is it fair to say you know what a team is? Here's what he had to say to that question.
I think it's quite easily middle of December to find out where your team is at, to be quite honest with you. And you can tell night in and night out if there's that togetherness, and then there's that camaraderie to say we're going to do whatever it takes to sit together and play hard together. So I would say middle of December is the time that you figure that out.
Alex, I thought we would be saying after 10 games we had a pretty good idea.
BK gave them until November 1st and said, that's it. I will not accept any improvements.
After that loss against Colorado, I said, they got to show me something this weekend, or we know. We know who they are. Because last year through 10 games, we didn't know it at the time, but we absolutely knew who the Blues were.
Yeah.
And we felt like we were trending in that direction once again. 2 straight losses, the New Jersey, and then a back-to-back. Like, whew, this could get bad quickly. Instead, it goes in the other direction. What they did... It's like when you got taxes, Alex. Sometimes you can get an extension. You ask for an extension, you say, hey, I need a couple of months here. And the IRS either says, yeah, you can get it, or nope, we're denying that opportunity for you. I have accepted their extension request. That's where I'm at.
So you're the IRS in this situation?
Yes, in this scenario, okay. not a surprise to anybody.
That makes
I'm the
a lot of
numbers nerd
sense.
of the show. I am giving the Blues an extension on their homework.
Yep.
They get another 3 weeks of evaluation. I will give them until roughly Thanksgiving. You get until Thanksgiving. At that point, you will have played against Winnipeg, Arizona, Colorado, Tampa, San Jose, LA, Anaheim, Arizona once again, and then finally against Nashville. At that point, we will know who this team is. Those are a lot of the teams that are in the same range as you, kind of in this middle portion of the Central Division. I will know by Thanksgiving, I believe, who this team is.
Well,
or I'll give him another extension.
Well,
We'll
thank
see.
you, Mr. IRS, for allowing me to work on my taxes for 10 more days. I typically, as Panger mentioned, like you do look at like December, middle of December. I think you've got the end of November. I think if you want a really good idea of what this team is, you're going to see it in the next 3 games. And I know I've said this a couple of weeks already where it's like, the next 3 games will get it for you. Look, October, we wanted to see certain areas. And I think October showed us defense can play. Offensively, you wanted to see a little bit more. But the next 3 teams you were going up against are the 3 teams that have beaten you so far this season. It's Winnipeg that you hung around with other than one mistake in the 3rd period that let them off and run against you. Arizona, where they just embarrassed you on home ice. And then Colorado that you hung around that game until the 3rd period. Those 3 games, if you're going to see this picture of the Blues offensively, defensively, goaltending, you're going to get a good idea if this offense is sustainable. Because if you just have this roller coaster where you're good for a game, you're bad for a game, you're good for 2, you're bad for 2, it's going to be that all season. But 3 teams that just beat you, that know how you play, now you'll get to play them again. And then after that, I mean, if you want to go further into November like the IRS allowed us to, I mean, you got your West Coast road trip minus the San Jose game. You're talking about L.A., Anaheim, and Arizona. And then you wrap up the month of November against 3 teams in the Central for you. So realistically, at the end of November, you could be talked about as the top of that middle tier that Doug Armstrong wanted to see this season.
I mean, as of today, by the standings, they are
3rd place team.
They are literally at that spot. As of today, if you go by points percentage, which is kind of what you have to do when all these teams have played a different number of games, you are the 3rd place team in the Central Division. And so, yes, I have been up and down and up and down and up and down. So has the Blues' performance. Like, I'm riding the roller coaster right along with the rest of you guys. I was skeptical as of last week. They got my attention. That's what happened over the weekend. I'm not all in. I am not ready to buy into what we saw over the last 2 games.
Let's go.
But they have my attention. They showed me something that I wasn't sure if this team was going to be capable of over the weekend. They won at 5-on-5. Jordan KYROU looked like a star. Robert Thomas is finally shooting the puck in a way we've never seen from him in his entire career. Kapanen appears to be like finding himself again here in St. Louis. The goaltending has been outstanding. Over the weekend, I thought the defensive core played pretty darn well. Torrey Krug showing signs of life.
He and Justin Falk were a +7 against Montreal. So for people that are frustrated with Krug and Falk, give them their roses. They played awesome in those 2 games.
We're finally starting to see this team come together in a way that is meaningful against quality opponents. So they got my attention over the weekend. They need to hold it. And the way that they do that is by sustaining this level of play. Even if they lose, man, if you play the way you did over the weekend, I'm going to have so much more grace for you that way. But they've been getting their butts whipped in some of these games, at 5-on-5 in particular. So if they continue playing this way, I'll have a little more grace with some of the criticism of the team moving forward. Blues back in action tomorrow night against Winnipeg. Nice 4-game homestand here for the Blues. Alex will have your pregame coverage right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN, tomorrow starting at 6 o'clock. You guys can get involved in the show. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to do exactly that. We'll get to questions and answers at the end of this hour. You guys can always watch us on YouTube as well. 101 ESPN STL is the place where you can find us. If you want to watch us there during the show, you can do that. If you want to go back after the show, you can do so. It's always podcasted that way. The podcast is presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. All right, coming up next, we got to talk about the Tigers, man. Missouri came as close as you can to beating a top 5 team on the road without actually getting the win in the end. We'll get into it and what it means long term coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Pump fake, Cook, end zone, caught, touchdown, Luther Burden the third, and Missouri strikes back. Cook rolls right, oh, he threw it away and it's picked off. That's Stackhouse to the 20, Stackhouse down to the 5, Georgia.
We came here to win, not to keep it close, not to try to get it in the fourth quarter and see what could happen. We tried to win. We played to win and came up short. And, you know, don't regret the way any of the game played out. Came here and played to win and didn't quite get it done. I'm not deterred from what we're trying to accomplish this year.
Hey, man, if you told me going into it that Missouri was going to have the ball down by 6 with 9 minutes to play in the game with a chance to be able to take the lead on the road against a legit top 5 team in the country, I would have signed up for that in a second on Friday afternoon. That's exactly how it went. Alongside Alex and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. T-Bone out today. He'll be back in tomorrow. That audio was courtesy of CBS as Missouri loses on the road at Georgia 30-21. Alex, if somebody is looking for me to get mad and start yelling and screaming today about Missouri losing on the road at Georgia, it's just not going to happen. I don't have that in me. If I was doing this show the moment that the game ended, I would have been furious because it was frustrating as hell to watch the game the way that ended. But, man, as you get a little bit of time removed from yourself in that game, Missouri, there was nothing fluky about that game. It wasn't trick plays. It wasn't 7 turnovers that went in their direction where it kept them in the game longer than they probably should have been. That was last year. Last year was a fluke, man. Missouri was not as good as Georgia, and when you looked at the actual stats from the game, you look back at it, you're like, man, I have no idea how that game was as close as it was. This was the opposite. Missouri went toe-to-toe against a top 5 team in the country, and you can look at every stat, either the traditional numbers or the advanced numbers. Missouri was in a 50-50 game, and then they threw 2 picks. And one of them was as bad as you're ever going to see. I watched it 17 different times, I think, and I still
Was that the defensive lineman?
Happened. Yep, I don't know what happened. He was trying to throw it to his tight end and appeared to have missed the largest man on the field.
And the tight end also was pretty heavily covered in that throw that he was trying to make.
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was seeing there. So was it a mistake? Yeah, but they were right in there against a top 5 team on the road, and that's really all you can ask for. You want to get your shot against a team like that. They played really well. The running game was there. Cody Schrader was great. Brady Cook in the first half was awesome. He was poised as hell. Luther Burden made a play. Theo Weiss was making plays down the sideline. Like, everything was right there for you, and the game was decided by 2 throws of the football, and those 2 throws came from Brady Cook. The first one's really what decided the game, and after that, it was over. That was it.
I mean, I was very pleased at how that game turned out, which is crazy to say because you're frustrated. You want to win that game. You felt like you had a chance to win that game. But this is the difference between a number 1 ranked team that's undefeated and has been in the playoffs and won the playoffs, where in the second half they unload and they can clean up and finish off that game, whereas another team that's making progress isn't able to accomplish that. But you held Georgia to 10 points in the first half. Like, that was the part that you looked at and said, man, second half, I think people were expecting that to be a 3-touchdown lead for Georgia, where the game was over before they even went into halftime. And they held down Georgia's offense. They found ways to get the turnovers and found ways to force the punts, and they converted on their opportunities. I told you in the office when we were talking, the only thing was it felt like a different team in the second half. They played toe-to-toe with them, but you just couldn't get those stops like you got in the first half. But again, that's the difference between a 9-0, number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs team that's been there, done that, and a team that was never expected to be in this position, and a team last year, we were talking about firing the coach because they couldn't take the steps forward, and you went toe-to-toe and had a chance to win that game.
I strangely feel better about Mizzou today than I did going into Saturday.
Same.
Like, I know that's a weird thing to say, and there's probably some fans that are going to hear that, and it does not go over well with fans because I'm saying this coming off of a loss, but everything that we thought about Missouri was confirmed in that game against Georgia. Like, doing that against Kentucky is one thing. Doing that against Kansas State is another thing. Doing it against Georgia? means that you can do it against anybody. I don't care who the opposition is. Missouri's really good. They're a top 20-ish team nationally. Yeah. And in this kind of a season, when there is so much parity in college football, and there's like, I think 5 teams that kind of stand out, and then everybody else is somewhere in that like 6 to 35 range. They're all kind of jumbled up in the middle. Missouri on any given day could beat any of those teams in that 6 to 35. Unfortunately for Mizzou, Georgia's in 1 to 5. They're in the 1 to 5 category. They're better than just about everybody else. And they do to everybody what they did to Mizzou on Saturday. We got this text, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 702. Guys, you just got to find a way to win those kinds of games, and Missouri never does. I mean, Gary Pinkel made a Hall of Fame career out of that kind of a performance. Yeah. And what I mean is, man, occasionally, and it's occasionally, he would punch up. He won, I think it was 4 games against teams that were ranked in the top 15 in his entire tenure at Mizzou. And guess what? He went to the Big 12 championship multiple times, went to the SEC championship multiple times. You were right there on Saturday, and you couldn't quite get the job done. So they showed you everything that you possibly could ask for, and then their quarterback made a bad mistake. It does not make Brady Cook, by the way, a bad quarterback. No. He played damn well in that game.
Are you worried they're going to boo him again next time we get to another home game?
I've seen criticism of Brady where it's like, man, he made a bad throw.
Yeah, one bad interception.
He made a bad decision, and the rest of the game, he was awesome. He was using his legs once again, finally. You saw him. He looked healthy in that one. The throw to Luther Burden was amazing. Some of the back shoulder fade stuff that they were running, it's the only thing you can do to beat that defense, because if you throw to the middle of the field, you're dead. Just game over. He was perfect. Like, you can't ask for much more.
Tell me if I'm crazy in thinking this way, because after watching the outcome of the Georgia game last year, I felt like I always do. It's like Mizzou versus Georgia, you know what's going to happen. Even if they stayed toe-to-toe with Mizzou or with Georgia last year in the first half, they ished the bed and they lost. After watching them play that game, it feels like if you're in that same situation again next year, Mizzou has another opportunity to beat that Bulldogs team.
I mean, maybe. Like, I just feel better about the program. I feel like you have a better team.
I felt good about the program going into that game, though.
Sure, fair. But, like, so I'm going to read you some of the numbers from last year's game against Georgia. You tell me if this feels close to you. Georgia, 481 total yards. Missouri, 295. Oof. Georgia held the ball for 35 minutes. Mizzou, 25 minutes. Georgia, 28 first downs. Missouri, 14. Like, this game wasn't close, but Georgia turned the ball over twice. Missouri turned the ball over 0 times, and boom, that's how you get it to be what it was actually a closer margin of victory for Georgia last year than what it was this year. The difference is this year, you turned the ball over twice. They didn't turn the ball over at all. That was a 50-50 game. If Missouri plays that game against Georgia 10 times, I think Mizzou wins 3 on the road at Georgia. Yep. Probably 3, maybe 4. And going into it, I thought it would be like once or twice.
And the throws by Cook obviously fall under the spotlight. But one thing that the general audiences, guys, we haven't talked a lot about, the way in which the O-line this year, as opposed to last season, held up, because you were assertive. Yeah, assertive at times on both ends, and being able to do that and have a representative performance to be able to control the ball for prolonged stretches. That is the biggest difference to me, because so many individuals were wondering heading into that game, okay, how is this offensive line? An offensive line that, mind you, especially in the first quarter of the season, dealt with a lot of self-inflicted wounds, infractions. You're in that tough road environment. Exactly. What are you going to do? But at the same token, you weren't completely overwhelmed by the superior size and the athleticism there.
I remember early in Drink's tenure, one of the things that I was most critical of was their inability to go on the road and put up, like, even respectable
look like a quality team.
Yeah, they would go on the road, and it was like, what are you doing? This is not the same team as I'm watching at home. It doesn't make any sense as to how, like, you could play at home and you look pretty good against competitive teams, and then you go on the road and you just get destroyed by some of these teams that you're going up against. That doesn't happen. And this year, you go on the road at Georgia, and what is... we had Lisa who texted us earlier today and was saying, hey, that's one of the best environments I've ever seen. And I had a buddy that went down there as well, said, hey, if you could go to one SEC game, go to Georgia. Apparently the atmosphere was just absolutely incredible over the weekend.
I've heard it's better than Alabama.
I have too. It seems like an awesome place to watch a football game. And Missouri went down there with 90,000 people in the stands and had them shook for a half. The end of the half, man, Georgia's offense was so out of sync that Kirby Smart said, let's just go ahead and get to halftime here, boys. We don't need to run any plays here. Like, we're going to give the ball back to MIZZOU because we would rather have our defense out there instead of allowing our offense to make a potentially critical mistake.
Yeah.
That is how well Missouri was playing going into the half. So they played really well. They didn't end up coming out on the other side. I wanted to respond to one other text. This one comes from the 636.
Don't let them get to you, buddy. Don't, man. They're just going to bring you down.
Guys, Gary Pinkel never won a conference championship while at Mizzou. We need to set our goals higher than what Gary Pinkel was able to accomplish. Is that serious? Like, is that a real text?
Troller text.
That's a real text?
Yeah, it's a real text.
That's real.
Yeah, that absolutely is a real text. Yeah. It's the same people that say John Mosaic hasn't won anything because those were Tony La Russa and Walt Jocketty's teams.
No, this is worse. This is far worse.
Is it?
The Cardinals have money. The Cardinals are a top 10 market based on the fan base that they have in all of baseball. Missouri doesn't have the history of USC or Alabama or Texas or Oklahoma or Florida State. Like, college football is about history. That is what it is. If you look at the teams that are top 10 in the country right now, and then you look at the teams that were top 10 in the country 35 years ago, there's a lot of overlap there. Why is that? Well, because of money, because of historical fan bases, because of recruiting base, like all of these different things. There are things that Missouri has to overcome because of its location, because of a lot of different reasons that these other teams simply do not have to overcome. And so if you want Missouri every year to be what Alabama or Georgia is, you are going to forever be unhappy because it's not going to happen. It's basically impossible to do that. But what Missouri can be, and I think we saw this with Gary Pinkel, and I hope that people have more appreciation for the Gary Pinkel era now than they did even while we were in it. You can go 8-4 every year. You can go 7-5 every year. And then every 3 to 4 years, you've got an opportunity to do what Missouri had this year, which is win 10-plus games, potentially get to the conference championship, and take your shot in a one-game scenario where you can get into the college football playoff. That's what Missouri is as a program. There is nothing wrong with that. Missouri is a top 25 to 35 program in all of college football. And when you are that, that's what you can do. Look at what K-State did last year. K-State has had an opportunity to be able to go to the college football playoff depending on how a couple of games broke in their direction. That's Mizzou. Mizzou's pretty similar to that. Like, the ceiling for this program is this. This is it. You had a chance against LSU. If you pull away in that one, you have a chance to win 11, 12 games this year. You had a chance against Georgia. If you're able to finish things out there, you could go to the college football playoff. Like, that's it. But this is not an every year thing. We have to be able to understand that. We have to acknowledge it, and we have to move forward with it. Clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. That's what Missouri is.
Especially when you contrast that with the picture of just a few years ago, post Barry Odom, where you are right now. A little practical nature has to be enforced at some point.
No.
Think about it.
No, we don't do practical nature on this show.
You've been restored to relevance. Now take the next step.
Yeah. You're a top 25 team. You're a top 25 team right now.
Couldn't get Ryan Wingo to come over.
Enough of you.
Surprised he didn't commit to Georgia.
You're a top 25 team in the country right now. I think a top 20 program right now. And if you can continue to be that, I feel pretty good about where Mizzou football is. And occasionally here or there, you're going to have these peak years where you've got a chance to be able to punch up and beat two of the top programs in all of college football with LSU and Georgia. And if you do that, man, you're talking about a special season that all of us are remembering for the rest of our lives. Here's the tough part. Doesn't end there. On Saturday, you got Tennessee coming in. This is a really good Tennessee team. Not a great one, but a really good one. I think that Missouri is constructed in a way this year to actually take advantage of what Tennessee does well and what they don't do well. We'll get into that more, though, at the later portions of this week. Coming up next, every national analyst, Alex, that I listen to is adamant that the Cardinals have taken their medicine. Are you guys believing it, though? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
Blues enjoy a blistering weekend. Good morning. It's Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. St. Louis went into a bit of a tailspin near the end of its recent Canadian road trip, but Montreal wound up on the other end of a beatdown Saturday at Enterprise Center. The note prevailed 6-3, with number 10 getting in on the fun as well.
Everyone is trying to get this captain on the board. Look out, here it is.
He shoots, he scores! Just like that, Joe. Braden Shen, third point of the game, first goal of the year.
That's how it sounded in the third, courtesy of Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale here on 101 ESPN. The Blues return to the ice tomorrow versus Winnipeg, November 4th. Not as kind to the Tigers of MIZZOU. Georgia took down the squad in Athens 30-21. The men's basketball program actually opens play this evening against Arkansas Pine Bluff. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and LondoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
The Car Shield Studio on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. So earlier today, Alex, there was a piece on ESPN.com about all of the top potentially free agents this offseason and where they expect them to go.
St. Louis.
They had all of their experts diving into this. Buster Olney was on it. Jeff Passan was on it. And here's what Buster Olney had to say when discussing Blake Snell and where he could have eventually end up. He said, I think the Cardinals feel right here. St. Louis is desperate for help, and they seem to be more likely to overpay and overlook the concerns for Blake Snell, such as his walk rate. Other teams might be scared away due to the peripheral numbers, but the Cardinals aren't really in position to turn up their noses at a left-hander who has won Cy Young and will win another very soon, not when there are so many empty slots in their rotation. He is one of many national analysts that is connecting the Cardinals to all of the top pitchers in the market right now. Bob Nightingale said that the Cardinals are expected to be extremely aggressive this offseason, adding, the Cardinals have traditionally stayed away from big money expenditures since the David Price saga. This year is different. They were embarrassed by their season, the first time that they have finished last since 1990, and President John Mozeliak vows to never let that happen again. Quote, they will be in on Nola, they will be in on Yamamoto, and have told teams they're willing to use their outfield depth to trade for a starter as well. One general manager tells Bob Nightingale, quote, he is really, really motivated, talking about John Mozeliak, more than at any time I've ever been around him. And then there was this from Ken Rosenthal, another nationally renowned expert on the happenings around Major League Baseball, on Fair Territory earlier today.
The Cardinals have been vocal about this. They've said quite openly that they plan to address their rotation, and in a big way. Could come through a trade, could come through free agency. Probably most likely will come through free agency. Blake Snell, likely National League Cy Young winner. Aaron Nola, who has excelled for the Phillies for quite some time. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the 25-year-old Japanese sensation. Sonny Gray, he's a guy that's been linked to the Cardinals. Jordan Montgomery, a guy who's been linked to the Cardinals. Eduardo Rodriguez opted out of his deal with the Tigers. Marcus Stroman opted out of his deal with the Cubs. And Shota Imanaga, another top Japanese pitcher. Obviously, these guys are going to be in high demand because, as one agent told me yesterday, he has identified 6 teams, and we just named 3 of them, who need at least 2 starting pitchers. 6 teams. And, of course, then there are the rest of the clubs that need starting pitching as well.
So there's 3 national analysts, Jeff Passan, Ken Rosenthal, Bob Nightingale, all saying they expect the Cardinals to be hyper-aggressive in the pitching market. Derek Gould, a local expert, in my opinion, when it comes to the Cardinals, said earlier today he expects them to be in on Aaron Nola. He expects them to be in on Sonny Gray. He expects them to be in on Yamamoto as well. Alex, from every corner, as we start the general manager meetings today, everybody is telling us this time it's going to be different. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line.
You're opening up Hell's Gate. You do that.
Do you believe it? Do you actually believe this time is different?
I believe that they're motivated. I believe that they realize they can't do what they've done in the past and say that we're going to upgrade our team and make these changes and then say, oh, well, we couldn't get it. So, like, that's the text we're going to get. It's, wow, we hear this every year. Here's what we don't hear every year. Every national analyst around Major League Baseball confirming that the Cardinals are in on this, because we talked about this in the office. Sure, we can sit here and act like they need to, and sure, you can hear the Cardinals front office say, well, yeah, payroll's going to go up next year, but don't look over at Adam Wainwright's payroll. But we also would get Jim Bowden on the air and say, yeah, you're going to get a catcher and a fifth starter and be happy with that.
Maybe.
He
said you might be able to get another starter.
We get Jeff Passan on, who's like, yeah, the Cardinals aren't doing anything. Other than a couple of analysts who are like, yeah, the Cardinals are connected. It's never to this point.
I remember last year we talked to Andy McCullough, who writes about baseball for The Athletic, and we asked him what he thinks the Cardinals will do, and he said, I don't understand why they're not in the shortstop market. Can you guys explain this to me? And we were like, well, wait.
We don't understand
We think
why.
there should be two. Do you think that? He said, no. Why aren't they?
So, like, this is where it's at. So, do you ask me if I'm buying this? Yeah, I do buy that the Cardinals know that they have to be aggressive, and John Mozeliak is going to be very aggressive. Here's what I don't buy. Are you willing to be to the same level of aggressive as these other teams that are desperate to fix their pitching? Are you willing to be as aggressive as the Yankees, as the Dodgers, as the Phillies, as the Braves? Because if you're not, well, then you can sit here and talk about it all you want. But when all of those teams say, yeah, we'll give you 8 years and $275 million because we want you to sign here, well, are you aggressive, or are you just, well, we want to be aggressive. We want to seem aggressive, but we're just not going to go to that next level.
So that's what I'm really curious about. And we've talked about this a number of different times, but I thought the fast lane said it perfectly of what is the bare minimum that you'd have to see for you to be content with what the Cardinals offseason looks like, where you're going to be optimistic heading into 2024. And I think for all of us, we're all kind of on the same page. They've got to get one of Nola, Yamamoto, or Blake Snell if the top pitcher that they add this offseason comes from the free agent market. And if it doesn't, if it comes via trade, you've got to get somebody that would fit into that criteria. So you're talking about going out there and acquiring a Dylan Cease or a Logan Gilbert, somebody on that level, and that requires a lot. It either requires you to give up talent like a Nolan Gorman, who's a potential all-star that's going to hit 35 homers a year, or it requires you to give out the types of money that you have quite literally never spent in the entire history of the franchise. Those are the two options. You do something that is unprecedented, either via trade or free agency, or it's a flop.
Yeah.
That's the stakes this offseason for Cardinals fans. And it's fair. It's totally fair.
And see, this is the part that I will get frustrated with, is when you come out and you don't get Nola or Snell or Yamamoto and the trades aren't there because, hey, guess what? Teams don't want Dylan Carlson for their best pitcher available. I don't want them to say, well, guys, you want us to be aggressive. We were aggressive. We were in on all these guys. That's not what we want. We don't want you to say you're aggressive and not come away with anything. We want you to prove that you were aggressive. You proved it to me last year, knowing that your weakest area was catching, and you said, bleep it, we'll go out and get the best catcher available that we can afford. And I understand where they're coming from, because the trade requests were just absurd for some of those catchers. And you did it. But now you are at a crossroads of your trajectory. You've got all of this youth developing in your system. You've got all of the offense that you believe can be dominant. Back up your pitching. And if you just say you were aggressive, but yet another team outbid you by 1 year, or another team added on an extra $5 million AAV, but you said, oh, $24 million a year is too much for our blood, then you weren't aggressive. You were just fake aggressive.
So there were two stories over the weekend, and we'll get to our free agency roundup tomorrow on the show for the first time this offseason.
You're welcome, everyone.
Two stories over the weekend that I found interesting as they relate to the Cardinals, Alex. The White Sox decided to decline their $14 million team option on Tim Anderson. He was their starting shortstop. Teams believe that he is better at second base. He had a year from hell this past season. I thought they would pick that up and either start him at second next year or decide to trade him in the offseason. Instead, they decline it. They add a little bit of money to their payroll potentially for this offseason and open up a spot on their 26-man roster for the middle infield. They do not have a starting middle infielder right now. They do have Dylan Cease, though, and the Cardinals have a lot of middle infielders, and they don't have a Dylan Cease, so that's something to keep an eye on.
And they have a Luis Robert, 23-year-old star center fielder. You know,
Sure do.
Get that guy.
They're going to have him next year as well. The other storyline that I found to be interesting over the weekend, the Padres declined a 2-year, $16 million option on Nick Martinez. Now, for those that aren't familiar with the name, he was the guy that came over, I believe it was the same year that the Cardinals signed. It wasn't Miles Michaelis. Who was it that they signed coming over? Was it KK, maybe?
2022, they signed him.
It was before that. I think it was like 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But
so maybe it was, KK was the most recent one that signed. And I mean, Seung-Won Oh, he was playing in Texas Hill, so it had to have been KK.
I want to say it was the same year that they signed KK, maybe. I don't remember. But the Cardinals were in on Nick Martinez when he came back over from overseas. He is now a free agent. He has a 3.4 ERA over the past 2 seasons. He has thrown around 100 innings in each of those 2 seasons. He is the prototypical swingman coming out of your bullpen who can also make starts. He's appeared in 110 games over the last 2 years, Alex. 19 of those were of the start variety, kind of opener, if you will, like 3 innings.
Oh, great.
He's also had 9 saves over the past 2 seasons. So he's got the stuff that plays up at the back end of your bullpen, and he can start games if you need him to. If the Cardinals end up adding 2 legit stud starters, and they want to add one more guy that can start for them or can swing into your bullpen, Nick Martinez might be the ideal candidate to add to the back end of your pen. So 2 big stories over the weekend that kind of went under the radar in relation to the Cardinals. Tim Anderson declined their option for the White Sox, and the Padres declining the option on Nick Martinez, who very well may end up being an ideal 3rd pitching option for the Cardinals.
The Nick Martinez one, to me, is really good for the Cardinals because it just adds more pitchers on that 3rd player that they need to acquire tier.
It was Verhagen, by the way. They signed Verhagen over Martinez.
And honestly, what a great comp to who you're probably signing Nick Martinez for. You thought Verhagen was going to be this, but yet you know that Nick Martinez is capable of being this.
So that is what happened over the weekend. The Cardinals certainly have a lot at stake. They've got the general manager meetings beginning today. We will give you any updates as they come here on BK and Ferrario. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll give you a couple of quick thoughts on St. Louis City SC, their loss over the weekend, unfortunately ending their season. And we'll get some of your questions. We'll have some answers next here on 101 ESPN.
to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
Let's get into some questions and answers. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Let's start with this from the 636, pretty open-ended. Alex, I'm wondering your thoughts about St. Louis City SC. Obviously a great start to the season, the number 1 seed in the conference, but it's hard not to be disappointed with the way that the season came to an end.
Yeah, I mean, you could be disappointed. I mean, look, you were swept out of the first round of the playoffs when you were the most dominant team in your conference all season. So, like, it makes sense being disappointed, but let's not let that overshadow what you did in your inaugural season. I mean, that is massive to be that good. I think for how frustrating it is, like, didn't we kind of see this happening? I mean, you didn't play the greatest in the final 8 to 10 matches of the regular season. And then I told you guys going into the playoffs, I'm a little worried when you're a first place team and you sit around all fat and happy waiting for a team that had to grind into the playoffs. In every single sport, it makes me concerned. But for a game like soccer, you got to imagine momentum is a serious thing. So it sucks. I wanted to see this be a historical inaugural season in the MLS, but again, let's not let this overshadow what you did this season.
I had a couple of bets that came to an end over the weekend. I had City to win the Cup. I had MIZZOU to win the East. I had MIZZOU money line on Saturday.
How are your Jets and Bengals, though, going for winning their conferences?
Honestly, big game tonight. Big game for my Jets.
All right, I'm rooting for the Chargers.
If the Jets are able to pick up a W tonight, we're feeling real good about the parlay of the Jets and the Bengals to win their respective conferences at 85-1. However, getting back to St. Louis City SC, they won 2 of their last 10 games, man. 2 of their final 10 games going into the playoffs. Now, a lot of those were draws, but we always wondered, is this a matter of them just getting it back, flipping that switch, they get right back to their game, or was that something that was telling and it was representative of whether it's teams catching on to the style or the St. Louis City SC running out of gas, whatever it was. And I think we learned it was the latter. And they ran into a really hot Sporting KC team. You know, like Sporting's been awesome since May 1st. And I think I undersold that going into the playoffs. And obviously it ended up showing up.
Did the underdog mentality get lost? Like, because that's the one thing that it never really happened to Vegas, even though Vegas was so dominant that first year in the NHL. Like, it just always felt like the players realized that they were misfits on a team that nobody expected to do that. Did that disappear for City the deeper they got into their season?
I don't think so, man. I think it's just hard to win consistently.
Because I feel like hard. But that's a hard thing to hold on to, and like that's your driving force all season. And then if you lose that to where you realize, like, hey, we're the toughest team that anybody you play against, that doesn't drive you the way it drove you the first couple of months of the season.
Maybe there's something there. I mean, it's possible. I would say that for me, I think a lot of what happened is a lot of these guys came over, and this is a really freaking long season, and it includes a lot more travel. And, you know, I'm the last one that's going to give travel as an excuse. A lot of the guys that came over to play for City had never played a United States travel schedule. And a lot of the leagues that they're playing in over in Europe, and it's like a 1-hour flight everywhere that you go. And here
in your inaugural team too, that's getting used to how this works.
I mean, you're traveling 3.5 hours to the East or the West Coast regularly. It's just a different schedule than what a lot of these guys are used to. And some of them were still playing for their home countries as well during the season. It's just a lot. And so I think there's some of what you're talking about for sure, the mentality of it all. I think some of it is the league adjusted to them and they didn't have a counter. I think some of it was injuries that accumulated over the course of the season. I think some of it was as those injuries took place, they became a different team because Sam Adeniran became a big-time piece. Nico became a big-time piece. They added some pieces on the fly. Their outside backs in this game, it didn't go well. They made some changes to the lineup. I think there was a lot that went into it, and ultimately it resulted in them just not playing well in the final month of the season. Final 2 months of the season, really. September 1st on, they didn't look like the same team. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll get an NFL quick hitters, some of the biggest storylines coming off of the week that was in the NFL, including, as of today, Alex, Who would you say is the best team in the AFC? We'll chew on that for about 15 minutes, but next, star might have been born over the weekend for the St. Louis Blues. Alex has the numbers to back it up next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about My Dentist 100 West Dental. Look, it is so important to have a dentist that you trust, because I've had the dentist that you thought you trusted, but look, the work wasn't going on behind the scenes. You weren't getting that preventative procedures that was taking care of you. And next thing you know, I find out that they haven't been doing x-rays of my mouth. I find out that there's a tumor that they missed for 10 years, and then I have to lose 7 teeth and now have implants in my mouth. All because of a dentist not doing the proper work. That's why you need to go to 100 West Dental, because they have a brand new office with the most modern technology, and the patient experience is at the front of mind. Look, this is a dentist that is all about the preventive procedures, making sure that your teeth, your gums, your overall health is the most important thing for them and for you. They're all about that early detection. So get on out to 100 West Dental, and they got a great offer going right now where you tell them my name, Alex Ferrario, sent you, and they'll take $1,000 off of an Invisalign package. So go check them out. You can schedule online, 100westdental.com. Get the best with 100 West.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
The Blues can't clear. Now they do. They get it to Shen. Partial break. He shoots, and he shoots it wide of the goal. Now is Saad in front. Back door to KYROU. He scores! Jordan KYROU waiting for the patient feed from the captain, Braden Shen. And the Blues take a 1-0 lead. 1 minute, 24 seconds into the first period.
Alongside Alex Alex and Grant, jeez. It was bound to happen at some point. I didn't think it was going to be Grant.
Yeah, I was going to say Tanner's typically the one that
he's here
that gets thrown out
alongside Alex and Bradford Bruns, who's doing a fantastic job working the board for us today. I'm Brandon Kiley. I am Ron Burgundy. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That's what it sounded like on Saturday night as the Blues get a goal by Jordan KYROU. And Alex, Jordan KYROU's been awesome this year. I know the goal production isn't as high as probably we would like to see it thus far, but he's getting shots on goal. He's getting opportunities on breakaways. And if he continues playing this way, those goals are going to come, man. I'm not in any way, shape, or form worried about whether or not he has the shot to be able to produce at a meaningful level. We saw last year when he had, 37 goals at the end of the season? This is a guy that has the potential to be a 40-goal scorer in the NHL, and he's a really good distributor as well. When you combine those two skills and you start seeing the defensive-minded play that we've seen this year where he's back-checking, he seems to be playing more of a well-rounded 200-foot game. All right, this is what we were all waiting for. This is the step that we thought he could potentially take. We asked on Friday, do the Blues have the star power that they need? Are they lacking that elite level talent that all of the contenders around the NHL seem to have? We starting to see it?
Yeah, we are. As Lady Gaga said, a star is born, BK. Did she say it? She probably didn't say it. She was just in the movie. Look, Jordan KYROU, I was skeptical with this, that he's like the star that you talk about in the NHL, because consistency is the most important thing when it comes to being a star, because on a nightly basis, you know that he's going to get it done. And we've seen, at least in the short version of his career, there are phases that you just disappear of Jordan KYROU. And in past years, he's a one-trick pony, that if he's not scoring goals and that disappears, why are you throwing things right now? I'm trying to get to my point. When his goal scoring disappears, there's nothing else he can provide to the team. That's changed right now. Now you're seeing him back check. Now you're seeing him break up plays, which is resulting in more offense. But here's where it really got me. I did a BK deep dive.
Oh,
yeah, I know. So I'm going to give you some names, and you tell me if you consider these guys stars in the NHL. Okay. Elias Pettersson.
Yes.
David Pastrnak.
Oh, just to clarify, star versus superstar. Or just star, right?
Star. Cool. Yeah. Star,
yes.
Superstar. Artemi Panarin.
Yes.
William Nylander.
Yes.
Clayton Keller.
Of course.
Kirill Kaprizov.
Yes.
Vladimir Tarasenko.
At one point, yes.
Jack Hughes.
Yes.
Alex DeBrincat.
Yes.
All of those guys, with the exception of Kirill Kaprizov, who came over to the NHL when he was older than Jordan KYROU. But every one of those players that I just mentioned to you reached 200 points later in their career than Jordan KYROU. Jordan KYROU hit 200 points in 226 games played. Pettersson did it in 230. Pastrnak did it in 250. Panarin at 228. Nylander 281. Tarasenko 253. Jack Hughes 241. Alex DeBrincat 255.
Interesting.
The offense has been on the same level as these stars in the NHL. Defensively, you're getting more, and he's creating more noise. He's got 39 shots on goal in 10 games, which is 25th best in the National Hockey League, and he's played, with the exception of 4 guys, 2 games less than a majority of these players. So for everybody that says, well, Jordan KYROU's not a star, you need a real star. He's playing like one right now, and you're seeing the fruits of that labor on both ends of the ice. In that game Saturday against Montreal, his stardom broke out because not only did he get 1 goal, his line created 7 points in that game. A lot of that was because of Jordan KYROU.
So if Jordan KYROU was producing at a level like he has in previous seasons, so what I mean by that is connecting on shots at the same level as he did in previous years, you would expect him to have roughly 5 goals so far this year.
Oh, yeah. He's had, 3 breakaways this season?
So he has a 5% shooting percentage on the season. His career is 13%, and that's been pretty static. Like, he's at 14, 14, and 14 each of the last 3 seasons, so right around there. If he was at a 13 to 14% shooting percentage this year, you'd expect him to have 5. He has 2 instead. If he had 5 goals and 4 assists through the first 10 games of the year, we would all be sitting here saying to ourselves, okay, so he's a point-per-game player again, and we're starting to see the defense there. They're trusting him on the ice. He's at 18.5 minutes per game. 2 years ago, I remember having the conversations with you, Alex, about why won't they play him more.
He was playing Jakub Vrana minutes.
He was at 16 minutes 2 years ago. Before that, he was at 14 minutes. He's basically getting an extra, 5, 6, 7 shifts a night now. I think we're starting to see what the Blues told us was coming by Jordan KYROU. Now, he has to continue this. Somebody on the text line said, guys, there's still more improvement that can be there with him defensively.
Absolutely.
There is. I didn't think he could get here.
I was going to say, these are the steps we wanted.
I didn't know he was capable of this. I thought Jordan KYROU was just, this is what he's always going to be, and it's okay that this is what he is. We just have to accept it. Well, he decided, I don't like when people are criticizing me like this.
Right.
Like, he got very frustrated about it, and he made it known how frustrated he was. He didn't even want to talk about it coming into the season. So he did something about it. He decided, I'm going to take matters into my own hands, and I'm going to be the player that everybody tells me I can be. And guess what, man? We've seen it through the first 10 games of the season. The numbers you just gave, that's real. That's tangible. That's something you can latch on to. He is producing at the level that other stars did early on in their respective careers. That is something that changes the trajectory of what we think this can be.
And you know what's even more impressive about those numbers for him is he's doing it without another star with him. Like, Robert Thomas is getting there, and you hope he is a star. But, like, listen to those names that I listed off to you. David Pastrnak has played with Brad Marchand basically his entire career. Artemi Panarin, the majority of his 200 points came by playing with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews in Chicago. William Nylander, you're playing with Austin Matthews. Clayton Keller, not really a star on his line, but they play like it with Nick Schmaltz. But Jack Hughes, I mean, has been a #1 overall pick. Alex DeBrincat played with Patrick Kane. Like, who's Jordan KYROU accomplished these 200 points with? Like, he's accomplished it with Robert Thomas, who, in my opinion, can get to that star level. Pavel Buchnevich, who's been there. Tarasenko, who was there. Ryan O'Reilly, Braden Shent. Like, he's not doing it with other guys who are considered stars or superstars. He's doing this as the star on the team. And that's another impressive feat.
So somebody on the text line said, guys, do you have any of the numbers on KYROU's defensive improvement compared to last year? He's been great, but I would love to hear contextually what the difference is. So this is something that's really hard to do in hockey.
Yeah,
there's almost
sites for this.
There's almost no way to numerically show you the improvements defensively. I can tell you what the shots are for and against defensively when KYROU's on the ice. I can do all these different things for you, but that is more indicative of what happens while he's on the ice in the 5-man unit, what is taking place with him, than it is on Jordan KYROU specifically. So it's really hard to numerically show you what has changed in his game. What I can do is tell you that when you guys watch the games, you can see it. Mm-hmm. You can feel the presence of Jordan KYROU on the ice when he's out there defensively. You don't forget that he's out there as the Blues are hemmed into their own zone, or as he's out there either on the forecheck or more reasonably on the back check. You notice him. And if you're noticing Jordan KYROU defensively in a good way, that's all you have to do. That's it. Notice him a few times a game defensively in a positive direction, and that is a significant improvement from what it's been in recent years. That's how you can evaluate him in my eyes.
And he has been going toe-to-toe with some of these other top players in the league. That New Jersey Devils game, it was his line that was playing against, I know Jack Hughes was gone, but it was his line that was playing against Jesper Bratt and Timo Meier. The Montreal Canadiens game, his line was going up against Cole Caulfield's line. So, like, you're seeing him get more responsibilities. He was doing that with Robert Thomas at the beginning of the season, and now that he's playing with Braden Shen and Brandon Saad, you're getting ideal matchups on the offensive side, but you're getting the play where you're eliminating the other side.
This is interesting.
You seeing what I'm seeing?
There's some big baseball news that we need to get to on the other side. Craig Counsell is going to manage next season. He will not be managing the Mets. He will not be managing the Brewers. He will be managing a team that currently has an existing manager.
So
we'll discuss it next here on 101 ESPN.
St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
I can't believe I care this much about where a manager is going to be in 2024.
That's not including the Cardinals.
It doesn't matter, but it does.
The greatest tweet that I just saw says, I've never cared more about Craig Counsell since I was a kid trying to emulate his batting stance.
So Craig Counsell is one of like 4 managers that really matters in Major League Baseball. I think he changes the calculus for whether or not your team's going to be successful. And there are very few managers that I could really say that about. Most of them, the vast majority, at least for me, Alex, and I know there are others that disagree with this stance. That's fine. We can all have our own beliefs on this. But I think like 20 of the 30 managers are somewhere in the middle where they don't really change it for a positive or a negative. They just kind of are there. And they're caretakers, and then you hire the next guy, and then you continue moving along. There's 5, though, that really matter, and they make your team tangibly better. I think Counsell's in that category. And then there's like 5 every year that make your team so bad that you can't win. Like you're either winning in spite of them or losing because of them. So I think that's kind of the way that I generally view the position. If you haven't been paying attention on Twitter today, I get it. Craig Counsell has been discussed as a candidate in seemingly every potential opening around Major League Baseball for the managerial spots. Well, earlier today, Cleveland, which was one of the rumored landing spots for Counsell, hired their new manager. It's going to be Stephen Vogt, the former catcher in Major League Baseball. He spent 1 year off. Now he's going to be the new manager of the Cleveland Guardians. Well, okay, that probably means that Craig Counsell's going to the Mets, right? That's been the rumor. It's either he's going to the Guardians, he's going to the Mets, or he's staying in Milwaukee. Well, then the Mets hired their new manager. It's the former Yankees bench coach. Okay, obviously that means Craig Counsell's going to be announcing that he's staying in Milwaukee. But wait, there's more. Ken Rosenthal then tweets out, Craig Counsell will manage next season, but it will not be the Brewers and it will not be the Mets. He is heading to a team that has an existing manager. We just went through this during the break, Alex. The only team I can think of that makes sense, I think it's one of 3 actually, but I think there's one that really makes sense. I think it's got to be the Yankees, because they had a season kind of similar to the Cardinals, but not as bad, where it was unacceptable and everybody wanted Aaron Boone fired. So I could see where that would happen. The other 2 spots that I would look at are the Blue Jays after how their season came to an end and their GM came out and publicly criticized their manager for their handling of that, or the Red Sox, where Alex Cora has said publicly that he was kind of questioning whether or not he wanted to be a manager again moving forward, and there's been some talk about him moving to the front office. They just hired their new Pobo. Maybe that's the one, but I think the Yankees are, for me, the most likely landing spot. Where do you fall?
Can I give you 2 more? Because
Sure.
I just looked at this just to kind of, what if it's the Seattle Mariners or the Philadelphia Phillies? Now, the Phillies sounds odd because we're talking about teams that had a chance to win a World Series.
Shock me.
It would, but I mean, if you're talking about finding the ability to take your team to the next level, wouldn't it be a manager that makes a difference with a team that's already a difference maker? And we know that, like, the Phillies don't care how much money they got to throw at somebody. And I only say the Mariners because the Mariners have all of this young pitching. You've got a guy who had the best pitchers in baseball with Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff and had success. And if you're the Mariners, you missed out on the playoffs. What if you get yourself a manager? Like, the Yankees seem to be the most obvious out of all of these because you just lose your bench coach. You've been verbally frustrated with Aaron Boone for like 3 straight years, and you know that the Yankees could say, yeah, we're not going to let you go to the Mets. We'll give you more money so you come here. But the Phillies and the Mariners kind of piqued my interest because these are 2 teams that say, hey, we need to find a way to get to that next level. Let's go get a manager that makes this much of a difference.
Somebody else mentioned the Dodgers.
You don't get rid of Dave Roberts.
They said Dave Roberts is going to be back next year, so I'd be pretty surprised by that. But somebody's lying. Like, somebody said at the end of the season, our manager's returning, and then said, wait, Craig Counsell's an option? Let's go get him. Like, let's go make that move because Craig Counsell matters. If you get Craig Counsell, it makes everybody on your pitching staff, to your point, Alex, that much better. So obviously somebody ended up telling a little bit of a white lie here because they didn't expect this to be the case. Somebody else asked about the Astros. If that is the landing spot, then they would It can't be the landing spot
there's
because
not a manager in
it was
place.
said there's already a manager in place, and their manager retired.
Mike Petriello brought this one up. He said, what if that they're going to hire a Craig Counsell so that they can move their existing manager into a front office role?
That's what I'm saying.
But you're not moving Aaron Boone to a front office role.
Well, I mentioned the Red Sox could be that team. Alex Cora is going to be moving potentially into a front office role.
But if you're Craig Counsell, why would you want to go there?
I have heard through the grapevine that the Red Sox are expected to be highly aggressive this offseason. I was told by somebody that has been in the know on some of the moves that have taken place transaction-wise. Like, he was the one that told me a month in advance that Brady was retiring and that Rodgers was going to be on the Jets. He knows some agents that apparently the Red Sox are a legitimate option for Shohei Ohtani. So if you know Shohei's coming, or you have a good idea that Shohei has a greater than 50% chance of being there, I guess that would make me interested in the job.
Everyone's asking Cardinals, are we going to nip this in the bud and say, like, this isn't happening? Your silence is alarming to me.
I don't think I can nip anything in the bud right now because I have no idea.
I mean, look, and I'm not speculating here. I am speculating here. I know nothing with this. But
so let's do this. Let's put this out there on the front end so that way we don't get in trouble. Everything that is about to take place in our conversation is reckless speculation.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, you're good.
If you want to be aggressive and you're John Mozeliak, this is being aggressive, right? This is to the point where you say, like, hey, we want to win. We appreciate what Ollie has done, but this manager takes us to the next level. I don't know how you do it in terms of firing another manager after you fired one previously.
I think it's very easy to sell. It's not hard to sell.
Everyone's on board with it, but does it? Yeah, I mean that's my tinfoil theory with it. Like, if you want to be aggressive and you're making it say we are not having another season like we just had, you bring in a manager who has literally squeezed every inch of juice out of that Milwaukee Brewers team that you've been able to with a lackluster roster around it.
Yeah, I mean
that's how you sell it.
It's a super easy sell. Hey, this guy's the best manager arguably in all of baseball. We just hired him. Full stop. Like, that's it. You don't. I have been a vehement defender of Ollie Marmol over the past 2 seasons. I thought he was excellent and was arguably the best manager in the National League in 2022. I was called a homer for that, but I genuinely believed it. I thought he was average this year, that he was okay. And I would not fire Ollie. If you have the opportunity to hire a guy that makes your team better, and he is this level of making your team better, I mean, you at least explore it. And if he says, I'm interested in coming to be the manager there, you don't just explore it, you go do it, you know? Like, and this is not me oh, wow, I've got the team. It's not
an NL Central team. Frankly, we should have said this one.
So this is what I said to you during the break, and then I kind of came off of it. The Cubs are hiring Craig Counsell.
Wow. Well, there's a slap in the face of the Milwaukee Brewers. Craig, we want you here.
101 ESPN breaking news.
There you go. It's official, according to Ken Rosenthal. Craig Counsell is going to be the next manager of the Chicago Cubs. Cubs are officially a threat.
Yeah. And now they've got all of the money to spend to go get Shohei Ohtani, bring back Cody Bellinger, sign some of these starting pitchers. This is the best decision that the Cubs could have made.
Yeah, the Cubs are officially a team worth taking seriously.
Yeah.
And they already had a good team this past season. They decided that they're not going to bring back Marcus Stroman. Now, he was the one that declined his option, but it came about roughly an hour later. The Cubs are not expected to explore a reunion with him. They are bringing back Kyle Hendricks on a 1-year, $16 million option. They picked that up over the weekend. I would expect the Cubs to be highly aggressive in free agency this offseason. If you're doing this, I would assume Cody Bellinger probably going to be back with them.
Oh, yeah.
Next year. I would assume that they are going to go out and make significant upgrades to that rotation. Like, I would say one of the top starters, Yamamoto, Snell, or Nola, it should be expected to end up in Chicago this offseason. Damn, man. That is a big-time move by Chicago. And not only are you hiring him, that is way worse than firing Ollie, man. Ollie is respected here. Ollie is appreciated here. Ollie is a guy that never played here, though. David Ross was...
He was a World Series champion with that team. They literally make T-shirts of him.
That is bold. They love that dude in that clubhouse. I mean, love him.
It's also bold for Counsell to like go to another team in the NL Central when Milwaukee has basically said like, hey, we need you here. And it's the team you came through, you went up through the organization and basically said, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm going elsewhere. Wow.
Can you imagine? I wonder what. Man.
I'll tell you what, this division is so much more intriguing now to me.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like, Milwaukee's going to blow it up. Let's move on from that. But now you've got the Cubs, the Cardinals, and the Cincinnati Reds.
Cubs cards could be back.
Yeah. Oh, I can already tell you they're back.
You know what's going to be super fun is if those two teams are in on a bidding war for one of the top free agent starters.
And welcome to going back to what we talked about earlier. You cannot say you're aggressive. You have to show you're aggressive. They just showed in this NL Central that, yeah, we're not going to be this team anymore. Time for you to show up.
That's a power play right there.
Yeah.
That is we're not comfortable.
No,
they
took their shot. They took their shot and it went in.
They actually took a shot.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Better than what the Brewers have done for the vast majority of the season.
It just wasn't blocked.
Man, wow. Is he officially one of the biggest villains in Milwaukee now?
Oh, yeah.
If you're a Brewers fan, you got to be furious.
That man he is the number one hated. I don't know much about Milwaukee sports, but I don't think of another athlete that's hated more than Craig Counsell now.
Now that Giannis has committed to the franchise long term, they're good.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
The ante just went up.
Yeah.
The ante just went up in the NL Central. Suddenly, the Cubs just announced with this move. Really, they announced it with the Dansby Swanson edition last year, but officially with this move, we're ready to win again. This is a big-time decision.
Yeah.
To fire a sitting manager who had been successful for your organization, both as a player and now as a manager, and to do so to go hire the guy that everybody believes. And this is why I said with Ollie, like, you can't just completely dismiss it outright. I can't even do that. The Cubs just did basically what we're talking about, where they said, hey, we got a manager that we like. Can we go get one that we love? And now they have one that they absolutely adore, and he's probably going to be the highest paid manager in the sport, and he's worth it.
Yeah, and he's going to make a difference for that team. And I completely forgot about the Juan Soto rumors, too. They're probably going to try and acquire Juan Soto.
I wonder if they do like a Juan Soto trade or Tatis trade. That's the one that nobody's talking about that I wonder if maybe
the Cardinals should do that.
A thing. Would you consider it?
Hell yeah.
If they said you got to include Walker in the deal.
Sure.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the one's a superstar now.
I like the makeup for Walker a little better. Fine,
but makeup's not, like, actually here.
I mean, he's good. I think Walker is already... I hear you. I'm just saying, like, it's tough to trade a guy that you think is going to be the future of your franchise for a guy that was just suspended for PEDs.
Yeah, when's that ever going poorly for the Cardinals?
A million issues inside of the clubhouse. I don't think that's going to be something that the Cardinals would even consider.
You got a clubhouse that can handle it now.
Man, what a move.
Yeah.
What a move by them.
Good for them, man. I mean, like, the Cubs basically were irrelevant for, a few years and said, we're not doing this anymore. I mean, how many teams are irrelevant for a couple of years and say, you know what? Screw it. Let's just go through this again. We'll be bad for 8+ years and then get some help, and then we'll be good again for a couple of years. They basically said, no, we have all of the resources available to us. We've got some good players on our team already. Go get the best manager possible and go start spending some money. They said we are not going to be irrelevant anymore.
Your move, Mo. To do this on day one of the GM meeting.
Checkmate.
Awesome.
Checkmate.
No. Just check.
Oh, it's coming, checkmate. The queen is in the corner right now, and rook and king are circled around. Wait, king's in the corner, queen and rook are circled around. I hate chess.
For those that are just tuning in, if you missed it, the news of the day is that all of the managerial musical chairs are starting to be filled. The first move this morning was that the Cleveland Guardians hired their new manager. It's going to be Stephen Vogt. That was our first hint of, okay, that was one spot that Craig Counsell was looking at. It's now filled. The Mets then made their decision. It was announced, hey, the Mets have hired their new manager. It's like, okay, I'm assuming that that's going to be Craig Counsell. Nope, wasn't him. It was Mendoza, the former bench coach for the Yankees. Then it was announced that Craig Counsell is going to be making his decision later on this afternoon. My assumption, Alex, was, okay, so the Guardians are closed. The Mets are closed. He hasn't interviewed anywhere else publicly. He's going back to Milwaukee. Awesome. Good on Milwaukee for being able to keep him there. And then it was announced that he wasn't going to be staying in Milwaukee and would instead be hired by a team that has a sitting manager. That team is the Chicago Cubs.
And kicked their World Series player off of the roster and said, "See ya."
Man. Good for them. Well, coming up next.
Can't wait for this upcoming Cardinal season.
We're going to talk some NFL, Alex.
Oh, yeah?
Who's the best team in the AFC right now? Is it the Ravens?
None of them.
We'll get into that coming up here on 101 ESPN.
.101 ESPN Sports Center.
Tigers take a minor tumble. Good afternoon, I'm Bradford Bruns, and this SportsCenter update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. On Saturday in Athens, MIZZOU couldn't quite run with the Dogs for a full 60 minutes. Georgia coming out on top 30-21, and as a result, MU slips to number 16 in the AP Top 25. Tennessee, suddenly number 14 in the nation, visits Columbia on the 11th. Last night, meanwhile, also brought a disconcerting outcome for SC. City falls to Sporting Sporting KC 2-1, officially ending the expansion squad season. The Blues find themselves on the opposite end of the spectrum, following back-to-back wins over New Jersey and Montreal. Jordan KYROU potted the first tally versus the Canadiens, earning a little love from Chris Kerber this morning.
He's doing the things you need to do to be successful. And when you do that, the offense will eventually come. I think Jordan KYROU has had a terrific start to the season. His first 10 games are good.
The voice of the Blues on 101 ESPN hopped on the opening drive earlier. Tomorrow, the Note will face off with Winnipeg at 7 o'clock. And according to multiple outlets, the Cubs have lured Craig Counsell away from the Brewers to replace David Ross as manager in the Windy City. The SportsCenter update was brought to you by Salika Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
As you just heard there in the update, big news today in Major League Baseball is that Craig Counsell has spurned the Milwaukee Brewers. Alex, I was just listening to some Milwaukee sports radio. We'll get to some of what I heard tomorrow. We'll play it back for you guys because I think you're going to enjoy it. They're not happy. They're not thrilled that the manager that they had, that they loved, that was Milwaukee through and through, has decided to go to a bitter rival. So, not ideal day for the Milwaukee Brewers. We'll get into that more later on in the show today. Again, the big news, the Chicago Cubs have hired what I believe is the best manager in all of Major League Baseball and have announced their presence at the beginning of the offseason. Let's get into some NFL quick hitters coming off of a big week in the league. Alex, there were 4 legitimately compelling games yesterday, and then you just pretended that the rest never happened.
This is the first week that I strictly watched one of the big networks games from start to finish. I did
the way to go.
From 8:30, 12 o'clock, 3:30, then the night game.
The right way to go about it. First question that I've got for you after watching all day on Sunday. Who's the best team in the AFC?
I think it's the team that I shat on for the first 5 weeks of the season.
Go there.
I mean, I can't take it away from it. First of all, I never doubted their defense. I thought their defense was the best in the league, minus the Dallas Cowboys until they lost Diggs. And when they lost Diggs, then game over for them. But they were best from start to finish. Their offense was what I was concerned about. And they proved me wrong. These last 3 weeks, they've shown that they have a capable red zone offense. They've got a running game again. Mark Andrews is now relevant, and Lamar Jackson stopped making stupid mistakes. I think they've got one of the best coaches in the AFC with Harbaugh. So it's pretty obvious that it's the Ravens. Is it weird, though, that like the top 2 teams in the AFC don't include the Chiefs or the Dolphins? Because I think the second team is the Bengals.
Interesting.
I think Joe Burrow is showing that he's healthy. And I mean, now you're talking about a team that's won 4 straight games. Like the 2 best teams in the AFC have not come from the AFC West.
I think that's fair. I think there are legitimate questions right now about the Chiefs wide receiver core. I would have the Bengals as the best team in the AFC currently. And the reason why is because Joe Burrow is now healthy. The defense looks like it did a year ago. We've known this team to be a notoriously slow starter in recent years, and that was before Joe Burrow had a calf injury. In the last 3 weeks, they beat Seattle, they beat San Francisco, they beat Buffalo. Can't be a whole lot more convincing than that.
Nope.
The offense looks awesome once again. It looks like Mixon is back to being his former self. He looks fresh and spry once again. I think I would have the Bengals number 1. I would have the Ravens number 2, and then I would have the Chiefs at number 3. Personally, that would be the way that I would go with this. But if you want to put those teams in any category 1 through 3, I get it. I understand it.
Same with T. Higgins too, right? Basically invisible for the first quarter of the schedule. Yesterday looked much more like his usual self, and yeah, it may have taken a while, but Cincinnati now churning on all cylinders.
All right, next thing as we go through some NFL quick hitters, guys. If you were starting a team today, how many quarterbacks are you taking over C.J. Stroud? Because what he did yesterday was nothing short of remarkable.
Like you're talking rookie quarterbacks?
Nope.
All quarterbacks.
Because I think I've got 3.
Mahomes, Burrow.
Yep. Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts.
I love Jalen Hurts, man. He's just so awesome.
Yeah.
That guy is an absolute warrior, and I would want him to be the leader of my franchise. Like that. I'm building around that. I don't think he's been as good this year as he was last year. He's still been pretty darn good, and the rest of the quarterback play around the league hasn't been great this year either. So those would be my top 3. We can throw some conversations out there beyond that.
I don't think you need to.
I think C.J. Stroud, for me, would be the 4th highest rated guy.
I'd probably have Stroud above Hurts.
Okay. You're even willing to go one step further than me.
Yeah, I mean,
he's thrown 1 interception this year.
I know. I talked about Stroud in the draft. I'm like, guys, Bryce Young is going to be a bust, and C.J. Stroud is going to be that guy. Now, I'll give you credit. Like, Anthony Richardson looked like that guy until he got injured, but guys, C.J. Stroud has everything. He's got the mobility, he's got the sense to be able to make the plays downfield, and he's got the arm to do it. As much as I love Jalen Hurts, and I do like Jalen Hurts, but he's got a great offensive line in front of him that keeps him on his feet and gives him time, and he's got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
Totally fair.
Guys, who the hell is C.J. Stroud throwing to?
Exactly.
Tank Dell's good.
Tank Dell, Noah Brown, and Nico Collins.
So the Noah Brown one, totally fair, because I've been complaining all year about the Chiefs not having wide receivers. Do the Chiefs have better or worse receiving options than the Houston Texans? You guys tell me.
Maybe they got a worse quarterback option.
I don't think that's the case.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Are you sure?
I'll take Patrick Mahomes. You take the side of C.J. Stroud over Mahomes.
Talk to me in 5 years, and I might be rooting for myself.
Beyond Rice and KC, everybody's open for criticism.
That's the thing. So, like, I don't know, man. I think he's right up there. I'm unwilling to accept an answer that includes C.J. Stroud currently being over Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. I'm unwilling to have the conversation. If you want to have it about anybody else, I'm here for it. He's awesome.
He was a gamer in that game. And like I expected that one to just be done for when Baker Mayfield drove downfield, but the fact that, what did he have, like 43 seconds with no timeouts, and that man was heaving it. Now, props to his receivers for getting open, because apparently they can't do that in KC right now. But yeah, I mean, he is now the guy that everybody in that draft is like, son of a, what did we do?
Dude, the Panthers messed us up so bad.
Oh my God, yes.
I don't know what you do if you're the Panthers, because their quarterback is terrible. Bryce Young is not good. And I don't know if it's going to get any better. And people will text in. I'm sure it's coming. 314-399-9646. But BK, look at their receiving options. Yeah, we just talked about this. What about their receiving options? They've got Adam Thielen, who's been awesome this year. And when they had a different quarterback, their receiving options looked fine.
Wait a second. I thought 2 or 3 weeks ago, this was the team going all in that division.
Yeah, I had no issues with their receivers whenever it was Andy Dalton in there.
Yeah.
Bryce Young is averaging 5.5 yards an attempt. That would be good for a running back. He's a quarterback.
I'll take that for some of my running backs.
It's supposed to be a more valuable way to go about things, and instead it's the opposite.
Someone texted in
brutal.
And said also would take Allen, Lawrence, Lamar, and Herbert over C.J. Stroud.
I'm willing to listen to the discussions about Lamar or Lawrence. I will not have the discussions about Josh Allen. If you want to text in and talk about whatever it is that you want to when it comes to Josh Allen, I will tell you that he's a loser. He's a loser.
Personally or professionally?
Professionally.
Okay.
I think personally he seems like a great guy. You can't win anything with that guy as your quarterback.
No,
you can't. He's not consistent enough.
I'm not having the conversation over Trevor Lawrence. I mean, maybe like long term. C.J. Stroud showed me more in that game. Really, you just said it. He's given 1 interception up this year. It is not even about just him. It's the weapons that he is throwing to and being competent.
It's all of it.
He's right in the race now with that team.
He has one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL.
And he's still making these plays.
He's getting crushed. And he is just like play after play after play. Looks like the best dude on the field.
And for some of the greats who have played at that position, you think about how much importance is placed on that intangible quality, elevating the talent around you. Statistics aside, we already know that he's on pace for one of the best rookie campaigns ever, but that's what he's doing right now with the dearth of weapons.
Single game record for a rookie in yards thrown.
Somebody on the text line. Guys, pump the brakes on C.J. Stroud. They've played the Bucks, Panthers, Falcons recently, not exactly Super Bowl teams.
Also beat the Jaguars.
I don't even have to go there.
No, I'll go there.
Patrick Mahomes 2 weeks ago played against the Denver Broncos, and he threw for 240 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I don't care who you play. If you look the way that he has this year, that means something. And so if he's going up against the worst defenses in the NFL, he's part of why they're the worst defense in the NFL now, because he's putting up numbers. So I don't want to hear it. You guys can watch the games. You can watch the eye test. I don't want to hear about EPA. The numbers nerds are going crazy with that right now. Like, I don't want to hear about any of it. CJ Stroud's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league so far this year, and he is a rookie. That is it's impossible.
When the Houston Texans beat Jacksonville 37-17, mind you, CJ Stroud's line that game, 280 yards throwing, 2 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence, 279, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He made Tank Dell the player of the game with 145 yards receiving and a touchdown. So, no, I'm not going to sit there and pump the brakes on it. We've seen it from start to finish.
Guess it throws a little bit of rain on the NFL's new cognition test, huh?
Yeah, what is it?
You're going to have to explain cognition test to me first.
They do this, it was S12, S something test where they test how your brain works, how it operates when it comes to...
Oh, that's this guy. Oh,
the recognition of...
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's not smart enough to play.
S2, I think is what it was. And he rated very poorly.
Oh, yeah.
Well, turns out.
I would say throw those tests away.
Bryce Young was like the top one that they've ever seen.
Yeah, so. I would say throw those tests away from now on.
Final thing here. Has the clock struck midnight on Geno Smith and the Seahawks, Alex?
Yeah, I think so. Somebody wrote off Geno Smith this season, and unfortunately...
He did right
back and said, I'm still here, and we forgot about it. I mean, you've got 3 guys in terms of weapons to throw to with Lockett, Metcalf, and Smith and Jigba, and I don't even feel like this offense is average right now. Like, you haven't seen the game-breaking week for Geno Smith or DK Metcalf. And you can use, they played some competitive teams, but Geno Smith just doesn't look like the guy. And, I mean, you've got all of the weapons. You've got a great head coach. Your running game is there. Defensively, you upgraded, but your quarterback's not getting the job done. Meanwhile, we just talked about a Houston Texans team that's quarterback is getting the job done. So, yeah, I think the Cinderella story last year that was the Seattle Seahawks, I think it struck midnight, and they need a new slipper, i.e. a quarterback. Disney reference for you. You're welcome, buddy. Glass slipper, because Geno Smith is glass. You broke the glass in case of an emergency, and the emergency was last year. You're making me explain this joke too long, and it's not funny anymore.
I get it.
Thanks, Bradford. I just should have shut up when I had the chance.
Turn back into a pumpkin, too?
Yeah, that was a good one, man.
Thanks. Coming up next, we're diving into the junk drawer. Maybe some more Disney references here on 101 ESPN. Hey, alongside Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. We got to tell you about our friends over at Apache Village RV Center. Alex, I'm sending my dad over there. He's trying to upgrade his RV right now. He's got one in the backyard. He says, I think it's time. It's time to sell this one. I am going to go ahead and upgrade. I said, Dad, you don't have to go any further than Apache Village RV Center. They're going to get you taken care of. You walk through the door and they become like family. They ask you, what is it that you're looking for? They don't tell you and try to push you into one thing or another the way that it is at so many other lots. Alex, go see them today over at Apache Village RV Center. They're going to get you taken care of.
They are. And the best part about this is, every time you walk in somewhere where you're making such a big purchase like this, they're always so pushy. Not at Apache Village RV Center. This has been a family business for over 40 years, 3rd generation. So when you walk through those doors, they are going to give you the information that you need and allow you to make that decision. So you'll get the best customer service. On top of that, they only serve their customers first, which is the best part when you become a part of this Meyer family business. So go check them out. Change the way you view vacationing with Apache Village RV Center. Go one better. Go Apache Village RV Center.
right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trust wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
Alex, I'm trying to imagine a heel turn similar to what we just witnessed with Craig Counsell going from being the manager of the Milwaukee Brewers to now sticking in the division and taking over as the new manager of the Chicago Cubs. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Browns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Time to dive into the junk drawer. Can you think of something that reminded you of this? Is there another, I guess maybe it would be like Brett Favre going to the Jets for a year or two and then eventually coming back into the division with the Vikings, but that wasn't immediately going from the Packers to the Vikings. There was something in between. Craig Counsell went from being a consistent playoff contending manager of his hometown Milwaukee Brewers to the hated Chicago Cubs, the intra-divisional rivals, overnight. Can you think of something like this?
I mean, I can't. Like, I'm trying to think of something that, like, stands substance that you would hate them because it's got to be, like, their decision to do this. Like, the one that came to mind to me was Brett Hall, the year that he left the Blues and went to Dallas. He signed as a free agent, but that was St. Louis saying, we're not re-signing you. Milwaukee basically told Craig Counsell, we want you back, and he said, nah, I'm good, and decided to go to somewhere else in the Central.
Belichick, the
switch from
the Jets to the Patriots, I think would be up here. That's pretty similar, but that he didn't have success in New York. He had the job for like 2 days and then decided on a napkin, I'm resigning, and then went and took the job in New England.
Would it be KD leaving and going to Golden State?
I wouldn't say
rivals.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say KD.
I guess kind of. There's some there.
As much as LeBron leaving Cleveland the first time around because it was so agonizing for Cleveland fans, and he was going to an upper-level team in the Eastern Conference against which you were competing.
I mean, I hated the guy, and I wasn't even a Cleveland Cavaliers fan.
I think the problem with that was the public nature of it, him doing the decision on national television.
Exactly.
I mean,
Craig Counsell essentially just did it. It was just on social media. I can't. I really can't, because I'm like going through every sport right now trying to think. I think Brett Favre, Bill Belichick's a really good one. I mean, I think LeBron falls into that conversation, though, because I despised that man for a couple of years after that move.
Probably the closest thing we've seen to that.
Probably.
Jason Hayward?
Yeah, Hayward's a good one, especially because he called the Cardinals old, which, I mean, he was right.
That's pretty similar to what we're watching here in terms of a guy that went in the division from one team to the other.
See, somebody brought up Pujols, but Pujols decided to go where the money was in front of him, but he went to, like, if he would have gone to, like,
if he took the money from Chicago.
Yeah, or at least somebody in the National League, but he went all the way across the country to the American League.
And took it from the Angels, who don't matter.
Plus, with LeBron, you had the splashy nature of that decision constantly thrown in your face if you were a Cleveland fan. How many? Not 3, not 4, not 5. It was just agonizing over and over.
Somebody said Joel Quenneville. Again, not Joel's decision. Joel was fired by the Blues. Yeah, Johnny Damon. Johnny Damon's a really good one.
And he's a Royal in my mind.
Yeah, well, you don't count in this one. Someone did bring up Wilson Contreras, but see, like, Wilson Contreras wasn't...
He wasn't wanted.
Yeah, they wanted to get rid of him, so that doesn't matter. Bryce Harper, yeah, I guess, but Washington...
Not really, because Washington wasn't going to pay him. That's the thing that I think is different is Milwaukee wanted to keep Craig Counsell.
Yeah, Milwaukee basically said,
They wanted him to be back in Milwaukee, and he said, I want to go elsewhere, though. I want to go manage a winner that is going to consistently be a winner, where I have more resources available to me. And that can't happen here while I'm with Milwaukee. So I think it almost has to be a situation where a guy goes from a smaller, like somebody that feels like a little brother going to a bigger brother. That's what this has to feel like. Otherwise, it's a little different. Because the Brewers always feel as if they're punching up to Chicago to beat the Cubs. And now the guy that always said, yeah, we're going to take them down, is now saying, actually, yeah, that's all fun and good what you're trying to do there in Milwaukee. I'm going to have my cake and eat it too by going to Chicago.
I guess you could say Johnny Gaudreau, but I mean, like, different places because it was Canada versus Columbus.
He went to Columbus.
But, I mean, Calgary was willing to give him the money. And he said, no, I don't want it, and went to Columbus, which is, I mean, look, that's a market that's less appealing than Calgary market, I would imagine.
And this is one of the more compelling. I can't believe we're saying this about a baseball manager. I cannot believe that that's where we're at. But it's one of the more compelling villain stories that we're going to have in sports in 2024.
He's going to be hated by Milwaukee for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And that's got to sting for him because, I mean, you're talking about a legend in that area.
This would be like somebody going from the Giants to the Dodgers. Like a player that had an offer
like Jock Peterson? Oh, well, Dodgers to the Giants.
Like
whoa.
This would be like if Madison Bumgarner in his prime was offered a similar amount of money from the Giants and decided, no, I would rather play for the Dodgers.
Or Lincecum, yeah.
Like that's what this is in terms of the importance of the player. And honestly, even more so. Like, this would be like a St. Louis native who then played for the Cardinals, who became a star, spurning the Cardinals for the Cubs. Because that's what he is there. He is the Milwaukee Brewer. Like, he's the guy from there that played there briefly and then managed there to a degree where he took the Brewers to new heights. And everything was in his image. And now he's gone. David Stearns, who built it, is now in New York to build the thing better. And the guy that managed it is now in Chicago to build the same thing, but better in your own division.
Somebody asked a really good question. What if Yachty emerges as a manager position or a manager and he doesn't get the position in St. Louis and decides to go somewhere else? Does he become that villain in St. Louis?
I don't think so, because I think they would blame the Cardinals instead of blaming Yachty.
But what if it's Yachty's decision? What if Yachty
says,
says,
offered the job here?
Well, but I'm giving you a hypothetical, man. Stop getting so angry.
No. I'm saying I think that's why it's different. I think people would blame the organization instead of blaming Yachty.
Yeah.
I think in this scenario, they're blaming the manager, Craig Counsell, because he was offered the opportunity to come back. If Yachty was offered the manager job here and in Chicago and took the job in Chicago, people would hate him. But if he was not offered the job here and the Cardinals said, no, we want to stick with Ollie over him, and then he goes and takes the job elsewhere, then you blame the organization.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, somebody said Nick Saban going from Bama to LSU, or from LSU to Bama. There's definitely something there. The problem is he went to the NFL first and then came back to college.
I think we do also have to mention that the reason he's going to the Chicago Cubs is because they're offering him, what is it, $8 million?
Yeah. I think the Brewers were willing to, if not match it, get him pretty close to that. Well, the Brewers know how important he is to their organization.
Yeah.
Can they play in that sandbox, though?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. I mean, $8 million is nothing compared to what you pay players. You know, $8 million is cheap for it. I think one of the biggest competitive advantages in sports, market inefficiencies, so to speak, is paying your coaches top dollar. Because if you have elite level coaching, it can make up for some of the flaws that you have elsewhere. And it's so much cheaper than going up and covering those flaws with an $8 million starter.
And didn't Craig Counsell make it very clear that, like, managers are underpaid in Major League Baseball? So, I mean,
it's one of the reasons why he wanted to get top dollars, because he wanted to set a new bar for the other managers that are around the league.
Yeah, makes sense.
Man, what a time to be alive.
I love the people that are in. We love when people send in, like, examples of this, but the amount of people that are sending in examples from like 1964 or 1948, I'm out on that one, guys.
Somebody said Jerry Rice going across the bay to the Raiders. I mean, Jerry Rice was out of his prime at that point.
Say, when he like late 30s at that point?
I think this has to be a coach. That's going from
I think certain players do this, though.
Maybe, but it's hard because a lot of those players end up leaving when they're out of their prime. And so the team that loses them is like, you know what, that's fine. Like we're
Other than
willing to let
LeBron
them
and
walk.
KD, I think those are the two that probably match the most of this. KD's tough because it's not like the same division in the same situation, but I think those are the closest ones you can have in this.
What a cool story. What a cool storyline, and it's all happening right here in the NL Central. The buzz is with Chicago right now. Can the Cardinals steal it?
No.
By getting back on track. We'll get into that coming up next. The Take two. The Yamamoto. I was going Yamayoto.
Don't worry.
Mr. Robot. The Yamamoto's timeline should put in place the deadline for when the Cardinals need to fill their top 2 spots in the rotation. I'll try to say that a little better coming up on the other side here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK. So you just couldn't pick a worse time to sell your home than right now. Sure, it's worth a small fortune, and that's great, but are you really going to swap that 2 or 3% interest rate that you currently have for 7, maybe even 8% on a new house? Probably not. You don't have to do that when you get involved with the Get Paid in Stay program from Truehold. This is going to be something where Truehold will buy your home now at its best current value, and you bank all the cash right now while you continue staying in your home until interest rates come back down, or for as long as you'd like. It's totally your call. Plus, you won't have to pay property taxes, you no longer have to pay insurance, and you don't have to pay any of the upkeep. Truehold will pay all of those expenses. To learn more about Truehold's Get Paid and Stay program, call 1-855-300-9993 or visit them at Truehold.com for the smarter and faster way to cash out on your home's full value without having to move. That's 1-855-300-9993 or visit Truehold.com.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. This is exactly where you want to be, listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So, the
Yamamoto! This is why he's not coming to St. Louis! They are going to clip this and send it to his agent and say, when St. Louis calls, because this idiot can't pronounce his name.
I don't know why that one is so hard.
Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
We're just going to go with Yoshi. The Yoshi timeline should put in place a deadline for the Cardinals. Alex, he has been officially posted by his team back in Japan. And what that means is they've got 45 days to negotiate a contract over here in the major leagues for where he's going to be playing next year. So basically, you're talking mid-December. Mid-December is when you will see Yoshi sign with a Major League Baseball club. I don't know if the Cardinals are going to be that club or not. I have no idea. I'm skeptical. That being said, there's a lot more buzz about the Cardinals in relation to Yamamoto than I anticipated.
Nailed it.
This comes from Bob Nightingale. Quote, a year ago, it was starter Kodai Senga and Yoshida, who ended up signing with Boston, that made the biggest splash on the international market. This winter, it's Yamamoto who will make more money than both of those players combined. He's expected to receive at least $200 million, and rival executives believe that he'll wind up signing with the Mets. He then continued, though, that he believes the Cardinals are involved in the Yamamoto sweepstakes, and they have told teams that they are willing to use their outfield depth to also trade for another starter. Alex, what do you think the Cardinals' interest level is and should be in Yamamoto?
I think it is and should be, and it's the same conversation for me at the highest level of any free agent pitcher right now. And we've talked so much about Nola, we've talked so much about Snell and Sonny Gray, but they don't compare to Yamamoto. I mean, I was reading Derek Gould's piece earlier this morning, and I mean, you're talking about the Cardinals having a representative that is a part of the front office for the team that he plays for. Yep. They have a international scout that they hired who lives there and works solely with scouting these types of players. And then you're talking about the agent that is Nolan Arenado's agent is representing Yamamoto. We're talking about Lars Nootbaar playing with him on in the Worlds. You've got everything is screaming the Cardinals want Yamamoto. The Cardinals want Yamamoto. So it is at the highest level of this Cardinals scouting this guy on a regular basis, knowing that they need pitching help and realizing that this is somebody who they have connections with and have been scouting for a long time. So that's why it should be at this level, which means if the Yankees fly in, if the Red Sox or now the Cubs fly in and say, hey, we want you here, we're going to give you all the money. The Cardinals need to say, what do we need to do to match what you want, Yamamoto?
Is he your number one option this offseason?
He would be, yes. He would be my number one target. And again, I love Aaron Nola. I think Aaron Nola should be a guy that the Cardinals target, but I think you should start with Yamamoto because
why is it? Out of curiosity, like if you could elevator pitch on why he is your number one
because he's 25 years old and the upside is ace. Whereas Aaron Nola is 31 years old, and he's already been an ace. Can he be an ace still? Blake Snell, he's been an ace. Does it continue? I don't ask that question about Yamamoto. Sure, I ask the question, can he be an ace? Because we haven't seen it in the majors. But look at all the past history of players that have come over around what he has done. And look, he's put up historical numbers with his team this year. They've all lived up to their expectations. So I'm being sold on a guy who at the end of this long-term contract that I'm going to hand out, that's probably going to be $30 million a year, he's still going to be in his prime. Guess what? If it doesn't work out, yeah, I probably should have paid him this much money, but at worst, am I getting a guy who could be a 2 or a 3 for me? Overpay?
What if he ends up being worse than that? What if his stuff doesn't play the way we expect it to and he ends up being a mid-rotation starter?
Then you know what? You played craps and you got snake eyes. And that sucks. It sucks for the Cardinals if that's what happens, but I'm not.
Because now you've got a $30 million mid-rotation starter.
But which one's going to be more frustrating for you? A $30 million mid-starter who's 25, 26 years old, or a $30 million guy, $25 million, let's be honest, if it's Aaron Nola, who's broken, can't even pitch for you?
What if it is the alternative of $30 million Yamamoto, 25 years old, mid-rotation starter for the next 8 years? Or what we know Aaron Nola to be, going to throw 200 innings. He's going to be a 2 or 3 in your rotation for you. And that's what he is for the next 4 years. And he's a 2 to 3 starter. That's the alternative, is you decided not to get that guy, to get this guy, who ends up being nothing more than a mid-rotation starter. And this guy is an extra 3 years and an extra $5 million per year.
Then you know what? You're going to sit there and you're going to hate yourself because you made the wrong bet. But I'm also going to look on the upside of that. And the upside to me is a lot more realistic than the downside of this guy not panning out. Like, you don't put these numbers up and come over and just are a complete bust in Major League Baseball. If we were talking about Imanaga right now, I'd be a lot more hesitant with this because that guy doesn't have the upside. This is a guy who, again, is putting up historic numbers with his team over in Japan. Just won or got to a championship. I think his team lost. but you're putting up stuff that looks like an ace. They're saying it's the best somebody looks since Shohei Ohtani. You really going to miss out on that? Because, well, what if he becomes a 3 or a 4 starter and I'm paying him $30 million a year?
So I'm saying all of this just to play devil's advocate. It's the kinds of conversations that they have to be taking place right now with the Cardinals front office. They have to ask all of the upside and downside questions of every single pitcher they could potentially
And real quick, we should trust the Cardinals in terms of this evaluation because they've had a lot of success here.
They've done a really good job going over to Japan, going over to Korea to bring over guys that are either reclamation projects that had to go over there because their abilities in Major League Baseball weren't good enough to sustain in Major League Baseball, and then they resurrected their careers there, or going over there to just get guys from Japan or get guys from Korea. So they've done a good job with that overall. I think I agree with you, Alex, that Yamamoto would be my number one target. And I think what I'm willing to say on this is not that I'm going to be critical of the Cardinals no matter what if they don't sign him, because I don't think that's fair, because he has a lot of say in this. He gets to decide where he goes. And if history is any indication, guys at this level coming over from Japan typically go to a coast. Is there an example that you can think of, Alex, where a guy at this level came over from Japan and did not pick a coastal city?
I don't know. I don't know what his level was, but what about the outfielder for the Cubs?
I guess that would be one.
But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if his level is at this one.
Top 3 market in the country. So
again, but you said coast, not a top 3 market.
Totally fair. Picking a smaller Midwest market would be something that I don't think have ever seen in this kind of a sweepstakes. So there's a lot working against the Cardinals in that regard. What I do want to hear is that the Cardinals were more than competitive when it came to the money they offered. This was not about the money. It was about him wanting to play in New York, LA, whatever it ends up being. If that is the answer, it's really hard to be critical of the Cardinals. But if it comes out that the Cardinals were off by 2 years, or they were off by $50 million or something like that in the sweepstakes for Yamamoto, that is when I'm willing to be critical of them in this bidding. But what I do think this allows them to do, with there being a timeline that is firmly put in place as to when he has to choose his next team, you're going to know what the bidding war looks like with Yamamoto in the next 30 to 40 days. You will have a firm answer on where you're at with him. That is roughly in line with when I would anticipate the market's really starting to develop in a meaningful way for Blake Snell, for Aaron Nola. And depending on what happens with Yamamoto and where you lie in those sweepstakes, if you feel like you're probably not going to be the answer there, pivot quickly and make sure you go out there and get one of those other 2 guys, or go back to the trade market and get yourself a Dylan Cease, Logan Gilbert, etc. I do think the first move they make, though, Alex, is Sonny Gray. I still think that's going to be the first one.
We've always known that, but we need to take this into consideration. Cardinals aren't doing anything. They just announced that their 40-man roster now stands at 40. They claimed a guy, and then they traded for a pitcher from the Seattle Mariners. So, guys, there's no 40-man roster space for all of these pitchers you're wanting the Cardinals to get. Where is it? Cute. Yeah, where is it? Jared Young from the Cubs, the steal from Craig Counsell's new team. He's on the 40-man roster now. Where's it coming? Can't afford Yamamoto, as you like to call him.
And they claimed an outfielder.
Oh.
Jared Young.
Forever young.
Jared Young is a first baseman and a right fielder. He's a left-handed hitter, as you would imagine.
Left hitter, left pitcher. It's the offseason. It's the offseason for lefties.
He's going to be a 28-year-old. Last year in Iowa for the Cubs AAA affiliate, he had an OPS of 1,000.
Didn't the guy from the Diamondbacks they got, wasn't he Buddy Young?
Yeah.
Is the new slogan this year, Cardinals going young?
I did not know that.
You're welcome.
That was well played. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Coming up next, we'll play a game of In or Out here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my insurance agent, Tracy Bibb. She is the best when it comes to your insurance coverage. Why, you ask? Because the customer service is at an all-time high. She cares about her clients because when things go wrong, and look, things are going to go wrong with your car, with your house, whether it's hail damage or flooding or you get into a fender bender on the side of the road, you don't have to call an 800 number and remind the operator that you've been sitting there for 45 minutes while you're on the side of the road and you got to get to pick up your kids. It's a nightmare. Tracy's always available. In fact, she's contacting you throughout your coverage, making sure you understand what's underneath that umbrella, making sure that, look, if price increases go up, you understand why. She's always on top of things with you. So give her a call today. Ask for a free non-committal quote. Super simple with Tracy. She'll walk you through the whole process. If you decide to go with her and her coverage, they'll even cancel your previous insurance. So 314-328-4260. Just tell her Alex Ferrario sent you. That's 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bib.
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Come on, man. Are you in or are you out? It's in or out with BK and Ferrario.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You give us a scenario, we will tell you if we are in or out here on 101 ESPN. Alex, let's start with this. I just saw this tweet come out. It is a discussion from Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast. He said, I think that the Calgary Flames are calling around and gauging the market on Hanifin and Zadorov. He said, quote, I can see teams like Toronto, Edmonton, and Vancouver showing interest in some of those players. As far as this tweet shows, it did not mention specifically the St. Louis Blues.
Crap.
Alex, in or out, the Blues are going to be traded for Zadorov before the end of the year.
Zadorov? Out. Get the hell out of here. You're trading for somebody. It's Noah Hannafin.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you don't need another third pair defenseman. You need a guy to play with Colton.
Zadorov's playing 18, 19 minutes a night.
Yeah, because everybody else hasn't been playing well for him.
He did that last year, too. They were good last year.
No,
They were okay last year.
Yeah, they were bad last year. You can stop trying to polish that turd right now. You go after somebody who you view as the piece to play with Colton Parayko. That's what you do. And I'm going to give Nick Leddy credit. Nick Leddy has been good when he's had to play up there with him.
Why can't Zadorov play with him?
Because I don't think he's the two-way defenseman that you need. Colton Parayko is a guy that likes to jump up into the rush. You're going to have somebody who can also move the puck.
So I was wondering if maybe Colton Parayko becomes more of that. If you've got more of a stay-at-home defenseman next to him.
But I think the way that Colton Parayko plays, you need another mobile defenseman who can get the puck out of the zone with him.
I don't know if I agree with that anymore.
I mean, you've had stay-at-home defensemen with him. Nico Mikkola was not good.
He's not good.
But I don't think
you haven't had a good stay-at-home defenseman.
I don't think Zadorov is that good.
He's better.
I think we like Zadorov because, he's physical and he hits people. That's it. Okay, well, you don't play that way anymore in your own zone. You get the puck out of the zone. The way that he and Jay Bouwmeester played is what you're trying to emulate. And Noah Hannafin does that more than Nikita Zadorov does.
That's fair. Do you think that they are in or out going to trade for
I would say I'm out on this because if those are the teams that are involved, look at the piece. Like, if I'm Calgary, I'll give you Hannafin for William Nylander right now. If I'm
and if I'm Toronto, I say absolutely not.
Well, why? You need defensive help poorly.
Because William Nylander's been one of the best players in the NHL.
But you're not going to be able to keep him.
They might.
Unless you decide to move on from Mitch Marner. I'm checking on Mitch Marner if you want.
Sure. I don't think that Toronto, in season, I'd be shocked.
I would too, but I'm just saying if you're Toronto and Nylander's not going to be able to come back for what he's asking, and you got a defenseman that you could get in-house, that's the play. You don't have the necessary pieces to outbid those three teams if it's what you need to do to get a Noah Hannafin. Vancouver's probably not going to get that because if I'm Noah Hannafin, it sounds like he wants out of Canada. So I'll say I'm out on this one, even though I think it should be in on this one. In or out, fellas? The Cardinals go to the max level to sign Yoshi Yamamoto. And by max level, I'm thinking 8 years, 30 mil plus.
Oh my.
That's what it's going to take.
7 and 30 is what kind of the projection.
And I would imagine if you're getting into a bidding war with the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Cubs, you're going to have to go to that level.
So both the length and the AAV.
Yeah.
I'm out. I don't think that they're going to end up doing it. I would love to be wrong. I think it would be awesome. It would show a clear sign that they're changing. But I'm out on this. I both don't think they're going to extend that far and also don't believe that he is going to come to the Midwest. So on both sides of it, I'm very skeptical.
I concur. I'm out as well because simply I have to actually see that unprecedented commitment play out before I believe it. That's a ton of years and cash for somebody who on this side, obviously, is still unproven. And I'm wondering, actually, guys, do you have any qualms at all about, we haven't seen that much outside of just the footage that's out there, of course, on the internet, the scouting reports we're able to absorb, but his frame, his ability to withstand and persevere for, years on end in Major League Baseball, does that lack of size give you any pause whatsoever?
Nah. No. Short guy summer, man. That's what this is.
No, it's forever young.
I mean, Sonny Gray is a guy that I think they're going to give serious consideration to. He's 5'9" and 195.
He's already a Cardinal. What are we talking about serious consideration to?
It would be amazing if they had Yamamoto and Sonny Gray as their front two starters. Oh, my God. This fan base would go insane.
Well, and Steven Matz, too. Matz is a tiny dude.
No, he's not. Have you stood next to Steven Matz? Steven Matz is a big guy, man.
Who am I thinking of? Is it Zach Thompson, maybe?
I don't know.
Is he tiny?
You might. I don't know who you're thinking of.
A little below average.
Steven Matz is a big guy.
Man,
Palante, is that who you're thinking of?
Maybe.
I mean, he's like my size.
Well, but you're tiny too, so yeah, that's probably what it is.
I think Palante is probably the slightest guy that they've Steven Knight's a big dude. Do you have anything for in or out for us today?
I do, actually. It's right up your alley, or so I would presume. In or out, guys, big-time affair, obviously, this coming weekend in Columbia. You've got number 14 Tennessee coming in to visit the number 16 ranked Tigers right now. In or out, guys, after this weekend in Como, MIZZOU is back in, or is in, rather, the AP Top 25, 12 or above. Meaning you have to win, and you do it triumphantly.
If you win, does it put you 20 or above?
Next installment. Going into week 12, it would be then.
So going into the Florida game?
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll say I'm in on this one.
If they win this weekend, they'll be right up there. If they end up going 10-2 this year, they'll be a top 10-ish team by the end of the season. Especially if they win their bowl game. That's typically, 2 losses. Let's go back to last season just to kind of look at the final end of season rankings. See how many teams had 2 losses on the year. It's very rare, and it's why I think MIZZOU fans kind of scoff at it too much. There were 9 teams last season in all of college football that had 2 losses or fewer. It was Georgia, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee, Penn State, Washington, and Tulane, not a Power 5. So of the Power 5 teams, there were 8 of them. If you finish with 2 or fewer losses, you're a top 10 team nationally, probably. So, yeah, I think they'll be top 12.
Yeah,
if they beat
I'll say this one as well. I think the fact that you played so well against Georgia only confirms that this team is going to be able to continue what they've been doing all season.
Did anybody take a tumble over the weekend that surprised you, results-wise? Sliding back a bit. Among the marquee programs. And no, we're not getting into USC and Caleb Williams gate.
Not really, because I thought Oklahoma was going to lose that game against Oklahoma State. I was surprised at how lopsided the LSU-Alabama game was. I thought that would be a lot closer, and I thought LSU had a very real chance to win. Notre Dame would probably be the biggest surprise. I didn't see that one coming at Clemson, but other than that, things kind of went according to plan. I thought that MIZZOU would be close against Georgia, and most of the rest of the games kind of went according to plan.
I kind of thought LSU was going to make that a little bit more of a competitive game than what it was.
Great. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. Guys, in or out, Victor Scott will be the Cardinals' opening day center fielder next year. You want to hear something that I just read from Derek Gould in his chat, Alex?
Sure. He's young. It makes sense he'd be a part of this team.
I believe, and this is my own informed, educated view, not based on sources outlining it for me, just my experience, that, quote, there is a scenario where Victor Scott would make a push in spring training and the Cardinals simply couldn't ignore it. If Scott is in spring of next year, what Wynn was in spring of last year, it could accelerate his arrival to the major leagues. Part of that would be dictated by how Mason Wynn looks in spring training. He adds, if Wynn were to struggle in spring and the Cardinals had concerns about his offense, what you could do is put Tommy Edman at shortstop again and have Victor Scott open the season as your starting center fielder. So, Alex, I ask you again, in or out, Victor Scott, starting center fielder on opening day?
I'll say I'm in. This is going to really come down to him dominating spring training. And I mean by dominating, like the best player out there. But I think his speed is going to factor in the decision of putting him in the lineup. And if this team wants to be an offensive juggernaut, it's not only going to come from the power, it's going to come from the base paths like we saw the Diamondbacks do. And if you have a Mason Wynn and a Victor Scott at the top and bottom of your lineup, wherever you decide to put them, yeah, I'm saying I'm in on this. Plus, your center field's not at a position that I feel like they're comfortable with.
He would need to have a meteoric spring like Jordan Walker from a season ago. That's when you consider it. And I still don't think opening day roster, it's a sure bet, but you're considering it.
Yeah, I'm out on this for opening day. I'd be pretty surprised by it. I think that he's going to be more on the timeline that we saw from Mason Wynn last year. That would be my assumption, where if he performs well during the regular season, by the end of the year, you're talking about potentially bringing him up. He is a really intriguing prospect, though. I saw earlier today he has 80 grade speed. He's one of the very few prospects in all of Major League Baseball. For those that aren't familiar with the grading scale for baseball, it's 20 to 80, 80 being the highest, which is rare, and you almost never give it out. He had 50 stolen bases this year in 66 games at high A. Then went to double A, and I was like, okay, well, that's probably going to come back a little bit. 44 stolen bases in 66 games at double A. And then now he's in the Arizona Fall League, continues to hit the ball well, 16 stolen bases in 22 games down there, which is like a bunch of the top prospects in Major League Baseball.
I really think this comes down to also what they do at the trade deadline. Or not the trade deadline, in the offseason. If they trade a Tommy Edman or trade Brendan Donovan or Nolan Gorman, that opens up center field, and that's going to force them into saying, hey, Victor Scott, you better be ready because we're going to need you.
Unless they go sign somebody. Unless they trade somebody like a Tommy Edman and then go sign Harrison Bader, one of the other available center fielders going into the offseason.
And in any event, by installing Scott, you're finally going to be getting an asset that you don't currently boast. That would be stolen bases, swipes, and speed. The Central right now is predicated on a lot of running. Thinking about the strides that Cincinnati, Chicago et al. Actually made in that category last year to be able to take advantage of the new rules, it would be great to see that sort of infusion, which you just don't have with regularity in the Cardinals.
Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're getting into the BK and Ferrario rewind to finish up the show today. But next, are the Blues finding chemistry after breaking up the Thomas and KYROU lines? We'll discuss it here on 101 ESPN.
.101 ESPN Sports Center.
SC's run comes to a close. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Brunson. This is your Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The first playoff series in St. Louis City history ended unceremoniously last night. Sporting KC knocked off Bradley Cardinals Club 2-1. SC now out of the MLS Cup picture. The same goes for Vancouver out west as champions LAFC swept the host Whitecaps yesterday. Pucks, the Blues idle until tomorrow versus Winnipeg. Weekend action downtown, though, very fruitful. Consecutive victories over New Jersey and Montreal put the note at 5-4-1. More numbers. The football Tigers dipped to number 16 in the latest version of the AP Top 25. 7-2 Tennessee arriving in Columbia next. The basketball program actually beginning its campaign this evening, taking on Arkansas Pine Bluff. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Three 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. I want to get your guys' reaction to this as we discuss it as well. Alex, the Blues decided to make the difficult decision of breaking up the Jordan KYROU and Robert Thomas pairing on the top line. And since then, they've looked good, both of them individually, without the other being on the ice with them. Are the Blues finally finding that chemistry that we were waiting for all year long in your mind?
Yeah, I think they are. And look, it's good to have a KYROU and Thomas, but you were too predictable with KYROU and Thomas on the same line. And that line was predictable, but the team in general was predictable. You kind of isolate, you go into the other locker room and just like hypothetical purposes, you think of what the other coach and teams are talking about. When Thomas, KYROU, and Buchnevich worked together, those teams were saying, guys, if we eliminate this line, their offense isn't going to be as effective. And that's what they would do. The best defensive line would go up against KYROU and Thomas and Buchnevich, and both sides would kind of push each other out, but then the other team's depth would outscore the Blues because the best players were on the same line. So now that you're spreading the wealth, I mean, both games over the weekend, you rolled four lines consistently. New Jersey Devils, I mean, we saw the ice time rise with your third and fourth line. Hayes, of course, has 2 goals in that game. You get the fourth line that contributes. Jake Neighbors is the one that broke the scoring through. And then the Montreal Canadiens game. You dominate the first couple of periods with KYROU and Thomas's lines separately, and then in the third period, you're able to put the other lines out there to get favorable matchups. So I think you go by pairs. Thomas and Buchnevich are a pair that work really well together, and Kapanen is now opening up that time and space. And then you look at KYROU. KYROU and Schenn have always been an effective pair together. And then you put in Brandon Saad, who's a net front presence. Now you've got 2 top lines that can go up against other teams' top lines, and then a third and fourth line that can try and spread the offensive wealth occasionally.
Third and fourth line is about the identity. It's the Craig Berube identity line stuff. Yeah. They've just got 2 of them right now, and then there's Verana who's there, and he's got
an identity.
He's definitely got an identity. I don't know that it fits with what Craig Berube wants that identity to be, but that's neither here nor there. I think Kapanen's the one that opened this up, honestly. I think the one that's changed how I look at that top line is Kasperi Kapanen and the way that he's been playing with them. Because we've seen Buch with Thomas. Been good at times, been bad at times. Mostly it's been somewhere in between. We saw them with Jordan KYROU, and it didn't work for whatever reason. Kapanen's ability to be a puck retriever, to be a puck hound, to play the way that we saw at times with like a Jaden Schwartz, for example.
And he's got the speed that people don't expect him to have.
I think that's what's changed the outlook for that top line. So he, to me, has been kind of the skeleton key that has unlocked the top 6 for the Blues, and it has allowed them to get the best out of Jordan KYROU. I also think this. I think Brayden Schenn at times, this is me projecting, I don't know this to be true, but my guess, I think it's been frustrating at times to play with guys like Vladimir Tarasenko or Jordan KYROU, who are very much offensive-minded players. I think the comments from Brayden Schenn after that game the other night, where he said, hey, KYROU's been doing everything you could ask for. He's just not in the score sheet right now. We love the way that he's playing. I think that also tells you something, that he now feels comfortable playing with Jordan KYROU, and I don't know that that was always the case in the past.
Joey has talked about this. Schenn holds KYROU to a higher standard than everybody else on this team, because I think Brayden Schenn realizes what type of player Jordan KYROU is as long as you put the work in on the other side of the ice. And I don't know if that was able to be accomplished when you were playing with a Robert Thomas. Now you play on a line with Brayden Schenn, and it's not that Brayden Schenn gets frustrated playing with these guys. It's just if they're not playing the same level as Brayden Schenn, to where if they want to be in the offensive zone, like at times Vladimir Tarasenko would play like Jakub Verana, where you weren't getting it on the other side, it was just on the offensive side. And that gets infuriating if you're a guy like Brayden Schenn, because you're trying to drive offense, but the only way to drive offense is if you have the puck and you got to play defense. Now you're starting to see that from Jordan KYROU, and that's where Brayden Schenn can thrive, to where it also falls on Jordan KYROU. Like, if you're not getting that same push with your line, that same consistently with your line, we talk about chemistry all the time, and chemistry can go through line to line, but if you're on the same page as the guys you're playing with, then things start to become a lot more effective. And I just kind of look at each line as an identity. The Thomas line is the line that's going up against the other team's top pairs. So you might not see the offense on a nightly basis, but what does their top players look like? Thomas and Buchnevich are guys that can eliminate the opposition. And that means KYROU and Schenn get opportunities to go up against some favorable matchups. Look at the Montreal Canadiens game. KYROU and Schenn played against the second line that was the Montreal Canadiens, and they put up 7 points. The New Jersey Devils game, Schenn and KYROU played against Bratt and Meyer, and that was the game that Thomas and Buchnevich had success with. So it comes in flows, but right now, I think Schenn has been preaching to Jordan KYROU since last season. There's got to be an emphasis in this area of the ice, and now that he's touching it, you're starting to see what he's capable of. The same can be said about a Thomas and Buchnevich.
That's what it means to be a captain.
Yeah.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we'll have the BK and Ferrario Rewind to wrap this show up here on 101 ESPN.
We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It is all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
You can always watch us on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. Our studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. Alex will finish the show today by discussing the biggest news in baseball right now, which is that Craig Counsell is going to be taking the job in Chicago. The Cubs have made it publicly known now that they are relieving David Ross from his duties.
Why are you laughing at? It's not funny,
it's just
man.
Hilarious, man.
This is a man's life we're talking about here.
I genuinely feel bad for David Ross. It's not his fault
Just
that
a
the
better
best
dude.
manager in baseball became suddenly available. And they decided, hey, we want Craig Counsell. I get it. I would want him too.
Me too, man.
And David Ross was probably sitting there thinking to himself, all right, what are we going to do? We're going to be a real contender next year. We took the step forward this season. We were close. For about a week or two, we're like, hey, might be a playoff team this year. And this offseason, maybe you go get Juan Soto. You go get one of the top starting pitchers right back into this thing. And then, boom, gone. You're done. Amazing.
I forgot who put it out on Twitter, but just a friendly reminder that the end of the season press conferences do not matter because both A.J. Preller with the Padres and Jed Hoyer both at the end of the season presser said, these are our guys moving forward. We love them. Next week, boom, this guy's out. We're interviewing for a new one. Boom, this guy's out. We're interviewing for a next one. This might surprise you, BK, but so what people in the front office say actually doesn't come true.
That's why I don't care that the Cardinals didn't have an end-of-season press conference, because none of it's real.
Well,
it's all fake.
That's why I also don't care when they keep talking about being aggressive this offseason, because sometimes it just doesn't really matter what you say.
It's about the actions.
Yeah.
The actions from the Cubs show you that they are willing and able to be aggressive this offseason.
Yeah.
You don't go out and make Craig Counsell the highest-paid manager, not only in baseball right now, but according to reports, ever. Highest-paid manager ever in the history of the game, and then skimp on your roster. Mm-hmm. You don't do that. There's no reason to. You already had a guy that people considered to be, top 15, top half of the league in terms of the manager that was in place, and he's a team legend. He's a guy that's been around, that's created a positive atmosphere inside of the clubhouse. Like a lot of the things that you want a manager to do in the modern game, David Ross was capable, more than capable of accomplishing those things. You don't go out and make this move unless you're really trying to be aggressive this offseason. Yeah. So that puts pressure on the Cardinals to go do the same. You have to be highly aggressive, not just to keep up with the Cubs, but to get yourself back on track, man. To get yourself back to being the team that teams are trying to catch in this division. Right now, there really isn't that team, and it's up for grabs because Counsell left Milwaukee because they were the class of the Central, and now it's open.
And look, the division matchups don't matter anymore because of the change of the schedule. Like, you don't play the team 14 or 18 times like you used to. You play them less, but now it's competing with the entire National League because you're playing them more, which means to win the division, you have to be better than these top teams. And although you're not going to see the Cubs the same amount like you used to, when you play them in the minimum amount of times that you do, you need to come out ahead. You can't play 500 ball in 8 games against the Chicago Cubs, because if you do, now you're talking about not winning that Central Division crown. And basically what the Cubs just did is say, hey, this title crown is achievable. The Central Division allows us to fight to be at the top. We've got money to spend. We just got ourselves a manager. So this is the Cardinals. And I know they always use the phrase, well, we don't do our offseason compared to what other teams do. Well, you're going to have to, because if other teams are making themselves better and you don't want to be a wild card anymore, then you have to be better than that team.
Yeah, somebody else on the text line said, guys, the Cubs don't make an aggressive move like that unless they fully expect the Cardinals to be extremely aggressive this offseason. I don't think that's the case. I think that the Cubs saw what their roster was this year, realized, okay, we're not that far away. Our young guys are ready to go now. We've got Nico Horner. We've got other guys that are playing at the level that we expected them to. We signed Dansby Swanson, who was good for them. He helped their infield defense. And we've had a couple of pitchers really step up in a meaningful way, specifically with Steele. Now let's go make the push. Now it's time to do with this group what we did in 2015, basically, with the last group, where we're going to go add to this core group of players and try to compete for championships again. It's been almost a decade. They're ready to get back in on that. It's been almost a decade since the Cardinals have competed for championships, too. It is once again time for them to start competing the way that the Cubs just signaled they are more than willing to. For Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Bradford's done a great job the last couple of days filling in for Tanner Hendrickson. T-Bone will be back in with us tomorrow. We'll get to our pick'em reveal. Big game tonight in the NFL as well, Alex. We need the Jets. Jets. Jets.
Chargers.